Oh, I've got to make myself bigger. I'm really small. Huh. Here we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Unleashed with Scarlett Johnson, presented by Moms for Liberty. And we are live. Like, I've been doing recordings in area. This is actually live. And this is a concept I've been wanting to do. We've got so many guests today. It's kind of a free for all. People will be popping in. But this is the Parental Rights Podcast. We are going to talk to warriors, literal warriors, my friends, and they, they are amazing. And with no further ado, let's get one of them on right away. Hi, Shannon.
Hey, Scarlett, how are you?
Good. I literally ran here. I was throwing laundry in. So if I'm a little discombobulated, it's because my daughter had a late start. I hate
No
those.
worries. You're a mom. I get it.
So I'm
Thanks
like,
for having me on. I'm so excited.
look at your background. Looks so cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
wait,
you
I
are.
love it. I love it. It looks so professional. We're moving up in the world.
You've inspired me, Scarlett. Gotta get my whole setup going here.
I'm actually going to be doing some rearranging myself because right now I'm against a wall and there's a window here. So we moved the crib out and I'm actually going to take that wall. So I think it'll look cool. Do that over Thanksgiving.
It looks
And
pretty.
yeah, I like it. It's pretty. It's pretty. It's calming. It's like because I have to do all my work here and then I can turn off all of these lights that I have all around me and do some work. But
Looks awesome.
yeah. I'm a bit tired because Erin's here too. I'll bring her up in a little bit. But I'm a bit tired because at the last minute, I came in from DC and then I had a
Yeah, how
text.
was that? What did you do there?
Oh, that was great. I did a lot of things. I checked into the press office, it's just cool to be able to walk in through the gates, um, have my badge and just in awe of the White House, and I brought my professional camera. And so I took a bunch of really good pictures. And then I sat the press conference that's usually on Wednesday was canceled because the first lady and Usha Vance, the second lady, went to Camp Lejeune.
Yes.
And so the focus was on what they were doing there. And then the president was meeting with Saudi Arabia, Prince, and all of that. So it was pretty quiet. And then the next day, the press conference on Thursday, and Linda McMahon came, which was a surprise. That was really cool. And then I fly home. I go speak at a Moms for Liberty event because I did not want to miss that because that's like our grassroots. So Racine and Kenosha, not too far from you.
Yep.
And then I got a call. Oh, you want to go on Trace Gallagher's show? And I just say yes to all of this stuff because I thought, okay, it's a chance to amplify. Did not know what we were going to talk about until I was done with my speech and was driving home, and obviously can't be on my phone while I'm driving, but real quick was like, okay, this is the topic. And then there's a van that pulls up, a big white van, and that's the studio. So I go into the van outside of my house, and it's this like traveling
The
studio.
remote van.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's cool, but I don't think people understand, like, I can't see Trace Gallagher. I can't see any of the graphics he's pulling up. I have a microphone in my ear. I can only hear what he's saying. And the van would get too cold, too hot. So the driver, Chris, was so nice. Shout out to him. He was so nice. I said, I feel nauseous. He said, people have thrown up, but it's okay. I'll be fine.
Oh, because they get
And
disoriented?
I know, I just was so nervous. And then I'm looking and you're looking at nothing. So you have to pretend like you have to pretend you're talking, but you see nothing. Like you're looking up and there's nothing.
Yeah, that's awkward.
It's weird. And I can only hear, and there's a little bit of a delay, and then it's a blur. I talked up here and apparently, and then I'm done. I'm like, oh my gosh, was I terrible? Did I just sound like
Great. I'll check it out and I'll share it when you post it.
I know, I'm waiting for it too. My husband recorded, but you could hear the kids in the background but it was cool. It was really cool. Treescale was really nice that when I got to talk to him, and they were starting to tell me what to do, and I hear in the background they're like, "Oh, she knows what she's doing. She does this all the time." It's like it's different doing the podcasting than these clips, right? You know the difference.
Yes, it is different. Yeah.
Like you've been on all the Fox News shows and Newsmax. Like I think people like you have 30 seconds to say something
Very
and
quick. Yep.
very quick, and you want to make it count, and everything's in your head, but when the lights are on you and it's like you're live, it's like my mind's going blank. What do I say? What do I say? So
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it is fairly unnatural, right? I mean, you're very vulnerable, but you put your best foot forward and represent, your message and yourself. And, usually it works out pretty well. I mean, the good news is that the message that all of us are putting forth is like a 95-5 issue across the country. So,
yes, yes.
put on your lipstick, have your hair done. And I think America is really grateful when you bring team sanity messaging to mainstream media and to your platforms. So
I
thanks
guess
for doing that, Scarlett.
I can remove the banner that says show is starting soon because it started. I always forget
Yes,
that thing.
it did
So
start.
let's introduce you because you just come up and start talking. And so this is my friend Shannon Adcock from Awake, Illinois. And backstage, we have Erin Lee, and I'll bring her up in a minute. But I want you to talk about who you are and what you do in your organization.
Sure. Well, I met you early on when I first pretty much ran to the barricades, Scarlett. So you're in Wisconsin, I'm in Illinois, and we met at a Defending Education event in 2021. So I was fresh off of, uh, you know, working to reopen schools here in Illinois. We had some of the longest lockdowns around the country, being in a super Marxist majority state with Governor Pritzker, the worst governor in history, at the helm. And so we were fighting against teacher unions, against unlawful mandates, and I ran for school board. And I know you ran for school board pretty
Yes.
much like right after me, I think. And we just became a thorn in the side of teacher unions and woke indoctrinators and woke bureaucrats and politicians. And unfortunately, I recognize, and I think this really resonates with a lot of parents around the country, we thought our elected politicians would represent us. We thought that the Republican Party would be these strong, bold fighters for our families. And at least in Illinois, they weren't, and arguably still aren't, with some exceptions. So I recognized 2 days after losing my school board race that we really needed an independent platform to elevate our voices and to fight all of this insanity for our children. And so in 2021, 2 days after that school board race, I started Awake Illinois, and it took off because people were so hungry, Scarlett, for team sanity, for ethics and policy, for lawfulness. And a lot of people were looking around and saying, this is crazy. We have to do something, but people maybe didn't know how to get organized or didn't have, a platform to elevate their voices. So we started it for them. And I'm so grateful I found friends like you at the barricade, and you haven't stopped for 1 second. There've been highs, there've been lows, but proud to be a thorn in the side of woke.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin, we actually the GOP, the head of the GOP right now, Brian Schimming, is a very good friend, and he's my mentor. He became the chairman of the GOP just a few years ago, but when he was just working for the state party, he met me and some of the other moms that I was working with at the state convention. It was the first state convention we'd ever been to, so we're all like bright, like, wow, wow. And he met us, talked to us, and right away he knew that this is big. Like this could win us elections. That's powerful. And at that time, Brian Schimming was a guest host on a very popular conservative radio talk show in Wisconsin, mostly southeastern Wisconsin. And he had me on. And that kind of catapulted where, so that opportunity to get on the air, I realized early on the power of media,
Yes.
getting on the air and other people they can hear you. And so Brian got calls like, who was that? Who is that mom? Like, she was fiery. Oh, I liked what she had to say. And so that kind of got started. Now, there were members of the GOP that were not forward thinking, that did not think that they should get involved in school board races or nonpartisan races. And what happened was eventually a lot of us basically started to join our county party, run and win elections. And then now I think the vast majority of local GOP participate in their local school board elections, and they support candidates, and they know what time it is they're involved. So I think because Wisconsin's been a battleground state, we've been really lucky. I'm happy. It's not perfect, but I think a lot of the leadership of the GOP is very supportive of the parental rights movement. Just we don't have a lot of money. I mean, it's just slim pickings. So
yeah, I mean, JB Pritzker pours millions and millions of dollars into statewide elections to get Democrats elected, but there still have been outliers who've been able to grassroots campaign and get in. But I haven't seen as much unification that you've experienced in Wisconsin, where the GOP realized, okay, we really have to lean into this. I think that the old guard of the establishment of the Republican Party in Illinois is still very fearful, and it's safer for them to talk about crime and taxes, which granted, there's plenty to talk about in Illinois. I mean, we've made national news for both of those things, but the parental rights movement is a very unifying movement, and it is a hot button issue across the country. So when you're in Illinois and you've been losing for decades, what do you have to lose? Start working with grassroots organizations like Awake Illinois, Moms for Liberty, and all these people who have not been canceled by woke and by the clown cars and by these, radical crazies. There's a lot of grit in that to be learned as a candidate in the political landscape right now. So there could be a lot of, semiotic relationship building that could happen there. And grassroots has a good following. So a candidate, even for a self-interest standpoint, should want to do that to help campaign, on the cheap.
Yes. All right. I'm going to bring up Erin. Hey, Erin. Hi. Erin Lee. So Erin Lee, you're the founder of Protect Kids Colorado. So you're in a blue state. I'm purple state. Shannon blue, you're blue. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Yeah, well, Colorado is very similar to Illinois. We're like a radical socialist run state. But I'm someone who woke up the hard way. I represent like a majority of mothers our age who are sleepwalking, willfully ignorant, blindly sending their kids to public school. I'm a recovering leftist. I was like watching The View and voting for Democrats. And then they came after my kid. And it was just, I was punched in the face with the reality of what's happening in our schools. And, for a year, we focused on saving our daughter from the gender cult. She was 12 when she was lured into a secret club and transitioned and sexualized by predators and connected online to them. And when I spoke up about it, I thought, like, surely someone's going to agree with me. This was bad. It shouldn't have happened. And everyone was against me. The school sent Child Protective Services 48 hours after I found out that they had been grooming my daughter and objected to it. And so no one was on my side, except, as Shannon alluded to, the grassroots parents who were already paying attention and who stepped in and were like, here's how you FOIA, and here's how you expose what's happening. And this is how we fight back. No one's coming to save you, but we're here for you. And so when I went public about what happened with my 12-year-old daughter, so many parents came forward. There was, dozens of parents in my school district. I've now helped thousands of parents who've had kids fall into this wrong sex confusion at the hands of their groomer school districts, and they're desperate for help. So I co-founded Protect Kids Colorado to push these ballot measures because, as Shannon knows, in a blue state, your legislature cannot help you. Like, we have a super minority in Colorado. We are truly run by radical socialists. And it's almost like gender ideology is like our state mandated religion. Like, we're fighting with California to see who can come up with the most insane, radical, unconstitutional law that just strips parents of our rights and forces gender ideology down everyone's throat. And so we're taking matters into our own hands. It's really a We the People movement to pass citizen law and take our state back.
So, first of all, a little bit, and I know it's you, I've heard you speak before so powerfully about what happened to your daughter, but how did they start to groom your daughter? And then a question to both of you: what recent legislation have you been able to block? Because I know both of you have successfully, even despite all odds, you've been able to successfully stand in the way of some pretty big legislation. And so go ahead. So how did they start to groom your daughter at 12 years old?
The grooming started long before that. And it's sometimes so subtle, it's undetectable. It's, the pronoun conversation, reading assignments all about transgenderism. Like my daughter got assigned a book called George at 11 years old. I didn't even open the book. It looked so harmless. And then I would later find out it was all about a little boy transitioning. He talks about cutting his private parts off and watching pornography. And this was assigned reading in her English class. And so it was happening right under my nose. And I had no idea. They were normalizing gender transition, having, sessions about suicide prevention, but really they were just talking about gender ideology. And it wasn't until this club, which was, insane. They brought in a group called Skittles. That's 2 to 11-year-olds is their age range to groom. And they did it all in secret intentionally. Talked about polyamory and puberty blockers, and it was so overt. And then when I spoke up, I was insane. I was the bad guy. Like, how dare you draw attention to this important programming because of all the kids whose parents are not supportive. So it was happening for years and I had no idea. And it wasn't until she suddenly proclaimed trans identity that we woke up really fast.
So you told me a little bit when we were in Chicago at the Defending Ed conference, the area that you live in. I think that's relevant, and you might want to share, like, who are the billionaires that live where you live in Colorado?
Yeah, well, they actually work alongside the Pritzker family. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is owned by Pat Stryker of the Stryker Medical Corporation. And she is one of the main funders of child mutilation, along with the Pritzker family, along with the Rothblatts. And she's just poured her billions. In fact, there's a great book. I have it on my shelf back here called The Blueprint. And I encourage everyone to read this book. It's about Colorado, but it's how 4 billionaires came in and flipped a red state to blue. They did it out in the open. They talk about it in the book. They're very, very open about this is how we did it. We just poured our billions strategically into school boards, city councils, county commissions, then strategically House seats. And they just went up the ladder and flipped the state with their billions of dollars. And so when I looked into my school board race here, the school district that I sued for what they did to my child, unfortunately, SCOTUS didn't take it up, but I know they're going to take the little John or Foot case. But when I looked into who was funding the school board race, it was the NEA, the AFT, the Obamas, the Rockefellers, the Strikers, the Gills. I'm sure Pritzker had his money in the local school board race as well. So they're investing in our communities right under our noses. And unless you follow the money and you could take the breadcrumbs all the way to who's funding them, most parents have no idea that kind of money's pouring in.
So right here, I have the blueprint, how the Democrats won Colorado. And that's the book you're talking about, right?
And why Republicans everywhere should be concerned about it. So they talk openly in the book about how they are going to take the blueprint to Texas. And I think Texas had no idea that was happening. But if we look at Texas now, they've been infiltrated. They're Republicans are not Republicans. And a lot of their laws that are being passed or not able to be passed is really reflective of how this blueprint has been implemented even in red states. We were just the first.
That's scary. Wow. I'm going to get this book. I did not even know. I'm putting the link right now in the comment section so that people can get to it. It's insidious, and the Pricksters, and right, Shannon, doesn't he have a transgender sister or something that's
a cousin?
Okay.
Yes. Colonel Pritzker, who was a Republican leaning donor up until he got involved in transgenderism. He now goes by Jennifer, and he has poured millions of dollars into, for example, Lurie Children's Hospital in the city of Chicago, which has a gender clinic and has been doing puberty blockers and gender affirming care, which is careless. It is unethical. And I'm glad that more is coming out from HHS, from the federal government, on the proven harms of mutilating and sterilizing healthy children. So the Pritzkers are, I think, 12th, 13th, 14th wealthiest families in the world. You're talking crazy money.
Yeah.
And when that's funneled into nefarious causes, they become really bad actors. So, they can purchase their way into politics. J.B. Pritzker, my governor, he's a very unimpressive person, but he has the power of the purse. I mean, most people in politics, I think, are actually pretty unimpressive, but he is horrible. And I think that, whether it is his cousin, who, by the way, Colonel Pritzker, has been married to 3 women and sired biologically 3 children. So he had the benefit of growing and coming of age without the interruption, endocrine interruption of hormones and puberty blockers. He became an adult male without harming himself. So how nice for him. But meanwhile, he has pumped millions of dollars through the Taiwanese Foundation into Lurie Children's Hospital and other NGOs that are pushing this. So the Pritzker money is being funneled into really horrible things. And you mentioned legislation. Pritzker helped get really radical legislators elected to our state legislature. One of them, Ann Stava Murray, who at one point was always in photo ops with him. I think they purposefully removed her from those photo ops because we scorched and stopped her radical bill here in Illinois, 4876, that was drafted to label parents like you, Erin, who are intentional parents, who are looking out for their children, trying to stop them from medicalization and from this grooming of gender ideology. If you try to do that and this bill passed in Illinois, the Illinois government would have labeled you a child abuser for stopping the process of medicalization for a confused child. So you think about where that could go. That could result in financial penalties or even DCFS taking your child away from you. And that actually was filed right before 2 days, the Friday before Super Bowl weekend. And I think that was intentional. And thanks to our advocacy, we started a video that weekend that launched. And it went viral because everybody during Super Bowl weekends, on X, and they're, posting things to social media. And so people started sharing this, and we put her face, this radical legislator, attached her name to this bill. And once people saw what it was about, they were very upset. And so this bill couldn't even get read in committee, which is a very early part of the legislative process, as many of you are aware. We scorched it so badly. And that was when I started doing live streams with Awake Illinois. And I had on people from all different backgrounds. And we all just came together to say we have to protect these kids. Yeah. It didn't matter if you were gay, straight, Christian, not Christian, left, right, purple, blue, wealthy, not wealthy, rural, urban. Everybody just came together to say this needs to be stopped, and people need to know what actually is going on with the billionaires that fund these NGOs, with the overall activism of this and the evil behind this agenda. And so that was a huge win for a blue state. A lot of people did not realize, and still don't realize, that this was stopped and it could have passed. And this legislator, these people, these are not good people. You should be really, really worried.
Yep. That was huge for you guys to stop this legislation. Because it was an uphill battle. But that you were able to do that. And also with the homeschooling bill, what you guys did is working with Alvin Liu, you were able to kind of stop something before it started. And that's really important. It's really important sometimes that you've got to stop something before it starts, because once it heads off to committee, Erin, as you know, that's when it can get really hard.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out too that legislation, it would have put it into law. We had the same thing here in Colorado, and that's what we were able to stop. It was House Bill 1312, which is the worst bill passed, I think, in any state ever of all time. It is so blatantly unconstitutional. And I actually filed the first federal lawsuit with Defending Ed and Colorado Parent Advocacy Network and Do No Harm against that law. So we were able to strip that language that would have labeled parents as abusive. They actually defined it as coercive control, which is a class 2 misdemeanor, which is akin to like harboring someone for sex trafficking. So that level of abuse is what you would have been officially labeled. But what's so important for people to understand is that this is already policy and practice in all of the systems. So Child Protective Services, family court. If parents are not willing to affirm their child, they're already labeled abusive, even though it's not explicitly written into law. And so what's really been on my plate a lot lately is so many parents coming to me who have lost their custodial rights. It's mostly dads who, the moms are what I call transhausen. It's like Munchausen syndrome, where they're pushing their kids down this path of transition. And it's usually the dads in a divorce situation who say, no, you're not a boy. I'm not going to go along with that. And the family court system will weaponize that against them. I know actually a liberal dad who was at the Moms for Liberty panel for 1312, super far left. He's a public school teacher, and his ex-wife, I mean, she suddenly came home and was in love with a woman, and well, she was trans and then she was a woman. And then she was suddenly transitioning their 7 and 9-year-old sons. And they found themselves in Colorado Children's Hospital for puberty blockers. And the dad probably would have gone along with it. He was just exercising like healthy caution, like asking very normal questions. What are the side effects? What does this mean? What are the long-term effects? Like, I'm not saying no. I just want to understand what the consequences are of putting my 9-year-old on these drugs. And for doing that, because he went pro se in the family court system, he lost custody of both of his children. They're now 13 and 15. He's had no contact in years, and they're both being fully medicalized against his will. So it's already happening. It's almost unfortunate we struck it out of law, because then we could have challenged it in the court system.
Wow. This is crazy. I have so many questions. I'm going to bring up Sonja Shaw. Hi, Sonja.
Morning. How are you guys, ladies?
Good.
Hi,
Boy,
Sonja.
now we've got a real powerhouse panel here. So, so Sonja, you are a school board member and president in Chino Valley in California, and you're running for state superintendent, which hats off to you, because wow. So briefly describe who you are, why you got involved in this, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so briefly, I was born and raised in Chino. I was always an involved mother. I didn't, unfortunately, have an involved mother. So it was really important for me to be hands-on in the classroom with my children. I owned a small fitness business before I got politically involved, because we have a moral obligation to be involved in politics. I really do believe that now. But 6 years ago, when Newsom shut down the world, that's our governor, by the way, in California. And I'm sure you heard about him, because he's trying to be the president of the next president of the United States. So beware, whatever, starts in California, unfortunately travels through the nation. And he's one of them that we need to stop. But long story short, he poked the wrong bears in California, the mama bears. And that's when I was like, what in the world's happening in the education system? And then eventually it led, like all of you. I mean, we've been, all together in this fight for many years now, which is beautiful. But we started traveling to Sacramento, which is our capital, and fighting against crazy laws. And then eventually our school board, we found out, was Soros backed and backed by special interest groups. And they had, we only had 2 members on the board out of 5 that, wanted common sense things and education to be focused on just that. And then eventually we just said, we're done. We're taking the seats. We're not playing around. And 2 seats were up. And I ended up being one of those candidates after leading a grassroots parent organization. And that year in 2022, we took those seats, flipped our board from a 2-3 to a 4-1, and we hit the ground running. We passed common sense policies that got us in lawsuits with Governor Newsom and our state superintendent and our attorney general for just wanting to involve parents, which they have a constitutional right, and we're fighting the good fight for that. And we've also passed many other common sense policies that are education focused, and the state and the unions constantly bully us, and they try to, stop us, but we do not give in, and we do not give up. And last year we took all 5 seats with members that believe education is should be the focus on reading, writing, and math. And also all 5 members are in agreement that if they want to come out with us with lawsuits, death threats, whatever it may be, the only way to take any of us out is on a stretcher. And God willing, we have the protection not to have that. And we've made that very clear.
So you're in California, and you were able to flip a board, and you're school board president, and you're passing legislation that protects girls' sports, that protects parental rights. You don't you're not going to say there's 137 genders, and you're in California and doing it. So this is just a warning, because I just went and spoke yesterday, and in Wisconsin, where there is no statutory requirement to include gender, non-binary, transgender, there's nothing in state statute. It's male, female. So where we are still protected, because Republicans control the Assembly and Senate, we still have school board members that are afraid to pass policy that aligns with Trump's executive orders and that fall in line with the guidance issued by Secretary Linda McMahon, the OCR, the DOJ, and they're like, we're going to get sued. So if you can do this in California, then there's no excuses for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're in a blue state. Pass the policies and let them sue you, because we're going to need to have lots of lawsuits in order to win this. We're going to need to win these battles in the courts. That's my opinion.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do believe in what you're saying, and I agree. Look, California has the most wicked laws, and school boards are supposed to pass policy. And unfortunately, I believe the laws that are passed here in California do not align with the Constitution, consistently. But again, I mean, it's keeping boys out of girls' sports. That's common sense. Title IX protects us. Federal law protects us. All the executive orders that you're mentioning, we were one, if not, the only one, but one of few school districts that has signed it all. We said, we're going to follow it. We're done. We're not going to do this here. We've been doing that before the executive orders. Actually, a lot of the executive orders already aligned with the policies that we adopted and are being challenged by the unions and states. Look, California spends $130 billion on education every single year, and only 47% of our kids can do reading, writing, math at grade level. That is insane. And, I sat in federal court on Monday. I was the whistleblower to a required mandatory training that the California Department of Ed continues to pour millions of dollars into. I did the record request. We all know Defending Ed gave us great tools as mothers, how to do those things and get all the documents to show all the proof of what we're saying, right? And so I did that, showed all the documents, sending people under the education umbrella to Pride Fest. What the heck are we doing here? Like Pride Fest, when our kids can't read, and we're sending adults to Pride Fest and then developing this crazy training. The crazy training had embedded into it links and policies that said you need to keep secrets from parents in regards to a child wanting to identify as the opposite sex. I don't believe in gender. That's an ideology and a religion of theirs. And I believe that we should just be using male and female. Genders make believe, and, let them use it. That's fine. I don't believe in their crap. So we are taking all that out of our policies. And again, back to federal court. I was sitting there. The judge restored my hope in honorable judges in California, because unfortunately, when we had our lawsuit, just wanting to tell parents if their kid identified as the opposite sex, Newsom and, all the rest of them sued our district for doing that. It was just saying, we're going to tell the parent, we're going to tell you, Erin, we're going to tell you, Scarlett. It was just simply that. And I, again, go back to federal court. The judge was drilling the state, and they had no words, stuttering, eye twitching. They were, and then they said, this is the deputy attorney general on behalf of our California Department of Ed and our attorney general. This deputy attorney general was literally saying he was the bottom feeder. Like, really? That's what the state is saying to a federal judge? We sent the bottom feeders to go in here because that's how serious we take it. Long story short, it's just amazing that these two teachers, Elizabeth Marabelli and Lori West, are fighting the good fight, and we're standing behind them because they say, no, we're not going to keep secrets. And
You-
unfortunately,
Was that recorded? Was that court, like, can I like find, was it?
not that judge is very old school. You're not allowed to have cameras. There's no recording, but the transcript will come out, and I guarantee that transcript will make history books, because it was very beautiful to see a judge literally defend parents' constitutional rights and put the state on this, like, pretty much in front of them. And the state looked this big. I mean, at one point when we had a break, I looked at those, attorneys, and I'm like, you guys are on the wrong side of history. And one of them says, no, I'm not. And I'm like, keeping secrets from a parent is on the wrong side of history, and you're going down on the wrong side of history. And he goes, I'm not going to engage with you. And I said, you already did. Like, too late. You already engaged with parents. You already got us involved. Sorry, dude. You're on the wrong side of history. And it's embarrassing that you're on this part of the side of history of telling parents they don't have a right to know.
So Mahmoud v. Taylor. I mean, that decision, that Supreme Court decision, and reading the whole opinion was great. Mahmoud v. Taylor, 6-3, parents have the right to opt their kids out of LGBTQIA+ themed instruction in schools. And it reaffirmed parental rights.
Yeah.
Despite that, the Scarlett case, still, these districts are still doing this stuff,
Well, Scarlett, the good news is, so Sonja, the resolution that you had provided is basically a template to protect Title IX, to stop a lot of these really radical policies. Schools in Illinois are adopting that, but they're being very quiet about it. They're really doing it in the underground. They're not taking to media, and I understand why. But the good news is that school boards are finding their courage, even if they're not willing to, put out a press release about it. But they're calling me and telling me what they're all saying is that when enough have done this, and I have a list going, then they will all jointly be comfortable going public. Yeah. But I don't even know if it was that they were worried about a lawsuit by a gender confused student, but I think they were worried that the state would withhold their funding. It's the same thing as the forced masking of children back in 2021. They just went along with the guidance and what the state thought they would want them to do versus using local control all along. So guys, it's really no different with this, but the good news is that your template, Sonja, has inspired schools in Illinois to adopt resolutions, male and female, and that is the definition for these policies. And so you're already seeing schools say, no, boy, you cannot go out for the girls' sports team, and they're really deferring to male and female as definitions. But hopefully as more call me and tell me, hey, Shannon, we've passed this. When more get on board, we'll all go public.
I love it.
Guys, I'm going to interrupt because we're talking about legal. So we have my friend, Dan Lennington, who's the VP and Deputy Counsel for WIL, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. And I love having, and he is a based lawyer. So here we go.
Yes.
Hey,
hi,
Dan,
guys. How are you doing?
Have you been listening to our conversation? Did you
Yes.
hear what Sonja said? What's happening? So as you're a lawyer, and I know, so you can say as much as you can, but what are your thoughts on what you heard?
A lot of resistance from school districts. We have kind of a list going on, and we're helping, we have a parental opt-out form that parents can use at will-law.org/parents. And you can opt out of not just LGBTQ curriculum, but you can opt out of gender ideology, race-based instruction, religious rituals. I've heard about kids being forced to go to Diwali celebrations or go to Native American religious rituals where they have to participate or they're punished. So the opt-out right is broad, but the things we're seeing from school districts is we're seeing them say things like, well, we just don't opt out. We don't allow opt-outs. Or they say this is a state mandated curriculum. That's not true. You do have a right to opt out of religious things that conflict with the right to direct the upbringing of your child. It applies to all instructional material. So lessons, even if not technically curriculum, would be covered by an opt-out under Mahmoud. We did hear a story recently of where the school teacher brought in an outside speaker, and they said, okay, today we're going to talk about why you have to use the pronouns of the kids in this way, mandatory pronouns. This is why LGBTQ is so important. And when the parents objected, they say, well, that's not curriculum. That was an outside speaker. So there are all sorts of little games they're playing. Also, school districts also say you must use our form.
Right.
We don't honor blanket opt-out forms. We've heard that. We've heard also schools saying things like, we don't do any of that stuff, when you know they are doing that stuff. Also, they'll say things like, well, we already have a sex ed opt-out. Which sex ed is different than LGBTQ curriculum.
Or even mental health screenings. That's something that's being pushed heavily in Illinois too.
Yeah, and I was just horrified. Scarlett and I were at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I was horrified to learn in New Mexico that they have these community schools where they actually have like healthcare inside the schools.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't even know such things was possible. I'm working in this space, and I just thought that's horrific. The parents never going to know like what's going on.
Tons of money of grants to get that here in California, and partnering with people like Planned Parenthood. I do want to mention with the Mahmoud case, our district, this is why I'm telling people, like, you could do the right thing and the state can't really touch you. And if they do, it's only going to bring awareness. So let them touch you, because then you have great attorneys like you. But we've already had a policy long before that case took precedence. And what we did when that case took precedence, we just brought our policy back out and we just cemented that into there. And it helps us because that policy says any controversial issues, which includes the LGBTQ, which is legislated into curriculum here in California, unfortunately, parents have to be notified. Kids have to be given the right to opt out of it. And that includes putting propaganda in the classroom, hanging all over the classroom. Well, did you notify the parents? And what is that being used in the curriculum? And did you give them a way to opt out? So we've been very aggressive at putting out what I call these union activists that are pushing this, I don't know what nice word to say about it, this garbage into the classroom. We just use it as our tool to say, nope, you're doing it wrong. You need to do the right thing. And parents weren't notified. So sorry, you can't do that. And if they continue to, defy, we all know what that means. They're unfortunately, again, in California, to get rid of a bad union activist. Because I don't like to say they're teachers. I don't believe they're teachers. Teachers are there to teach our kids and give them the tools, not indoctrinate our kids. But again, we continue to do everything we can to send the message. You're not going to do that here, especially in our district. But I think we have an opportunity to take any state. And I love it because we all come from different states, right? But I always try to tell people, red states have the worst board members. They are just not aware of it, right? Mm-hmm. They're not. These people, this is a national agenda. This is not just California. Yes. This is not just Illinois. This is not just Colorado. This is a national agenda. And if we don't start waking up and paying attention to the NP, elected positions, the nonpartisan, we're in trouble, guys. Like you can get all the red legislators you want, all the Republicans, but if you don't have people in those nonpartisan seats doing the right thing, I mean, we're proof in California. Look at what's happening. We're making the Newsoms, the people that are going to run for presidency come off their throne and really show who they are. Yep, exactly. I mean, they wouldn't be exposed if it wasn't for the parents that decided to say no, right?
Yep. That's so true.
You described every roadblock that I have come into, which is outside presenter, state mandated curriculum. In Colorado, it's actually in first grade. They mandated, it was a House bill in 2019, that you must teach LGBT and Q starting in first grade social studies, which is history and civics class. And we don't have curriculum transparency in this state. So it's like, we're going to expose your kids. We don't even have to show you what we've shown them. I'm curious what advice you have for parents that hit those roadblocks, because I get that all the time from parents. Like, I sent them an opt-out, they're not honoring it. Or even state law requires that I must be notified of this survey, this very invasive survey. We have what's called the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, which asks your kids if they're trans 8 different ways, 8 different times. And parents are not being notified. And the schools seem to have no culpability for this. So I'm just curious what advice you have for parents who hit those roadblocks.
Yeah, well, our sort of advice right now on the opt-out in particular is to try to work with the district and I know, we're all frustrated. We all know what they're really doing, but in order to really build the case, you have to really pin down what their policy is, because you could have provided an opt-out just to one teacher who was just being a jerk to you and saying, we don't do opt-outs, or we don't honor blanket opt-outs. And it's actually this, if we haul off and sue them, they would say, oh, actually, that's not the school district policy. You should have gone to the principal, or you should have gone to the school board. So we're telling parents, working with the school district in order to drill them down and pin them into a corner and say, okay, are you really saying that you're not allowing us to opt out of this curriculum? Is that what your position really is? So we have to really define what the position is of these school districts, make sure that it is actually their policy, and make sure you're actually getting the right decision maker. Once you've pinned it down, we're looking for plaintiffs to sue over Mahmoud, where schools are just absolutely not honoring it. On issues like curriculum, though, there is, the PPRA has a right to inspect curriculum. There are other federal statutes that give you right to your student records, like FERPA. So it's not just Mahmoud. There's all sorts of tools in the toolbox for parents to go after these school districts and make sure that they're complying with law. So, our sort of global position right now is just try to work with them and try to nail them down. There's going to be some ups and downs. There's going to be some bumps in the road, but we have to identify these districts that are just absolutely saying, no, we're not going to tell you when we're going to trans your kid. We're not going to tell you when we're bringing in the drag queen story hour. That's we're looking for those types of cases to bring where they're completely stonewalling you.
And may I add to that, it's so important for parents to have a paper trail. A lot of times these conversations with parents will happen by phone, or they'll invite parents in and it'll be the attorney, the counselor, the principal, and it's almost an intimidation tactic and everything's off the record. So I would encourage parents, ideally a dad. If there is a father in the home, I think it's really important when the dad steps up and starts communication with the principal to ask those questions and to build a paper trail. I think there tends to be just a better response based on my experience when I've mentored parents. And think of everything as if you are eventually going to have to sue the school district. I don't like to have to, support being litigious for litigious sake, but at some point it could come to that, and you should always have a paper trail. And if a principal calls you and stipulates XYZ, email the principal with a recap and say, to recap our phone conversation, you said that you will not let my child opt out because of XYZ. So you have to build a paper trail, and eventually, the precursor that I tell parents, and also a lot of times parents will just say, well, at Wake, Illinois, you're going to save my kid for me, right? No, that's not how this works. You, the intentional parent, are going to have to step up. And one of the ways I can really test whether a parent is serious about advocating for their child is if they have followed the whole process and they're still getting stonewalled, they can file a grievance with the school district. And you can put in the grievance report, it's almost like an internal police report, but, for the school, where you're saying that a particular parental right was violated or an opt-out was violated. That's going to be good, tangible documentation for a federal civil rights complaint or for litigation later. And so if parents are really serious in taking this on, a grievance is a really good start to the process. And it does put the school on notice that parents aren't backing down and that they're going to follow due process. And if it comes to the point of a lawsuit, so be it.
I want to mention that there is Rosalind Hanson, who is part of Moms for Liberty in Montgomery County, Maryland, and she was one of the plaintiffs in Mahmoud v. Taylor, and that historic win, that reaffirmation of parental rights. And she is already back in court. America First Legal is taking her case. I'll bring that up on stage because already the same school district is not honoring FOIA requests. They are being elusive. They are not answering. They're not being transparent. She's asking questions. She wants to know what she cannot She wants to opt her kid out. And already, I mean, the same school district that lost and was reprimanded by the Supreme Court, they're already in violation. Dan, what does that say about the tenacity of these school districts that they continue to obfuscate? Even, they always say, oh, democracy, democracy. Well, they're flouting the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we see this a lot. We've seen this a lot since 2020. I work a lot in the DEI space, and that is another area where not just schools but businesses will just dig their heels in and say, we don't care that the law says you can't discriminate based on race. We're going to just keep doing it because we think that's super important. And I think that these teachers, for the most part, have been trained so much that that they think they're saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
They think that there are all these kids out there that without their protection, and they need to be protected from their parents. Let's just make that absolutely clear, that they're the heroes in this story. They have put themselves as the center of the story. They are the heroes, and they're out there protecting these kids, making sure that they grow up to know that their gender is fluid, that they can have whatever morality or no morality in the world, that the virtues that their parents taught them are probably wrong and old-fashioned and discriminatory. And when you have that mindset, it's hard, and you've just got to dig in and root out these policies and these actions one at a time. I mean, we say, that in a lot of these cases with, the win in Scrimeti, the win in Mahmoud, we're going to have these wins hopefully soon in the West Virginia case and others that, we won the air war, but we have not won the ground war. We have to go house to house. We have to go after each and every one of these, because you know what? We can't bellyache. These are our kids. You are fighting for your kids, and a win has to be followed up with more wins. And so that's like why groups like America First and Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, I can name them all day long. Institute for Justice, Alliance Defending Freedom, all over Southeastern Legal, Mountain States Legal, Upper Midwest Law Center. There are dozens of law firms like Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty who represent parents for free. We'll litigate for you for free. We'll take your case on for free, so you don't have to. And that's why we're here. That's why this network exists of state-based and national-based litigation centers and policy centers.
And I have up on the screen leaked NEA training materials. Shannon, you put this up yesterday, and it's actually was one of the questions I was asked when I went on Trace Gallagher. And luckily you had sent me this link, so I knew something about it. But you did an exhaustive thread, Shannon. So what has been leaked? What's happening? And I think it has a lot to do with the conversation we're having right now, where the NEA is doing what in December?
Right. Well, this is thanks to the work of Defending Education, formerly known as Parents Defending Education. We're all friends with their team. They do excellent work. So they actually exposed the National Education Association, which is the largest teacher union in the country. The Illinois chapter of the NEA does not like me. Since 2021, when I first started, they put me in their propaganda videos and in their newsletter. And it goes to show the power of an invested and intentional parent. You can become the perfect adversary to the largest teacher union in the country. But what has been exposed is that in December, they're going to have what I would call a total activist-based training for educators to keep secrets from parents in the classroom, to push transgender ideology onto children. There's even how to come out at work. So all of this sexuality-based identity politics stuff, there is no discussion of literacy. There's no discussion of dyslexia or math. And in the state of Illinois, we have 30% proficiency in reading. In other words, 70% of our children are not reading at grade level. But the largest teacher union in the country which donates to Democrat candidates every election cycle, is pushing activism, leftist progressive activism in this training. And the materials were leaked. Again, Defending Education did a great job here. And it's just such a shame that it has brought our public school system to its knees. But at least we have receipts now, and parents are figuring this out. And it doesn't matter if you are a Democrat, Republican, far left, far right. Nobody should want secrets kept from them when they send their children to school. But this is what the teacher union is focused on. And we have to ask, why is this their priority and not literacy and math?
Yep.
So if I can add, Shannon, this is what exactly I was sitting in federal court on Monday, because I was the whistleblower that provided the screenshots from a required mandatory training, that exactly what you're saying. It's already in California. It's legislated. It's already rolled out. It's called PRISM. And everybody should be aware of what that is. It's actually pushing everything you said, LGBTQ plus, into the classroom, and then requiring districts to use the links in there for model policies, which included keeping secrets from parents in regards to this. California has and continues to spend millions of dollars into this training. And this training, we keep saying it's not stopping in California. Obviously, the NEA is proof of that. And, when I started to blow the whistle on it, we definitely got the CTA and the NEA's attention. And then we received what I call another bullying letter that I ended up ripping at the board meeting and throwing it in the trash where it belongs last night's board meeting. But I will say it's already there. They already have the blueprint. California taxpayers already paid millions of dollars to have it go across the country, because that's what they do. And it's horrifying. I mean, they even went as far as literally saying, after the module that tells you to keep secrets from parents, the next module is using an example of a special education student in 8th grade wants to be called they and them, and pretty much you're to affirm that. And that made me want to punch a wall. And I keep saying we need to be more relentless than them in protecting our kids, because they are relentless at destroying our kids. We have the screenshots, recordings, everything. And I ended up, making sure that the attorneys that are fighting this in federal court have access to it all, so they can continue to expose it. And I'll continue to expose it, regardless of all the unfortunate lawfare that they are using against our district. I mean, we have multiple court cases. And now I think people need to be aware, you can win or lose in federal court. And we all know the Constitution's on our side. So they know we're going to win that part, but they're now using, I don't know if you guys have it. We call it PERB. It's the, administrative law way that unions use to, I don't think all states have it, but some of them do. If you were to violate a teacher's work condition, well, you tell me why we're in court for parental notification when the teacher had nothing to do with it. It was our admin going to tell the parents. We're getting sued for that one. We're getting sued for our flag policy, getting all flags out of the classroom except the U.S. flag and our California flag and military flags, right? We're getting sued for every common sense policy you can think of. And if we're not
crazy, they're a total activist arm. They aren't even for teachers. I've talked to teachers. They've stopped giving dues to this organization because they don't help them when they're in a pinch either. They're not for students. They're not for teachers. They're not for education. They're for far left activism. But can I just read to you one of the pages? And again, if you go to defendinged.org, you can get all of the leaked materials. But can I just read this page 45 of this leaked material? Architecture of a race, class, gender narrative. That's a word salad right there. Listen to this. Name the villains who violate our values, expose their motivation of getting back into or holding on to power, and position them as a barrier to what our families need. Call out the villains, exploit divisions across race, and exploit the lack of familiarity with transgender people. Again, this is the largest teacher union in the country. They're not talking about dyslexia. They're not talking about literacy, about reading, about math, about getting ready to go into the world and work, to have a skill. It's all about gender and race. And in my opinion, it's exploiting children.
Absolutely. No, I was looking at some of the language that is in the Defending Ed brief that they have out, and they talk about the right has exploited ignorance about transgender people and our lack of an affirmative race-forward message to advance anti-trans attacks. They say things like they want not to say the word gender. They want to pluralize it to genders, that gender is offensive because there's so many genders. Like you said, they call anyone who's in opposition villain. Like we've said, they see parents as villains. They're
Right. If
they
you don't
there's
want
so
a
much
boy
hate.
in your daughter's bathroom, you're a villain.
They're a villain.
You are not kind. You are not inclusive. You are not empathetic. You're a bigot. You're a white supremacist. I mean, I joke all the time, you guys. You've heard me say this how many times? They're going to have to invent new words because they've called us everything, but
Yep.
we haven't stopped. And so, yes, the gender unicorn is one of the tools that they utilize, which focuses on gender identity. I mean, this is crazy lunacy. This is total lunacy. I mean, our grandparents should be aghast at the
They are.
fact that this is what our taxpayer funded schools have become. It is no longer about reading. It is no longer about arithmetic. It is no longer about having a skill for the future. It is all indoctrination, not education.
So the gender unicorn, this is an image that's to be used in preschools. Like in Wisconsin, they had guidance on gender expansive 2 and 3-year-olds. And the DPI the Wisconsin Department of Education, when this broke and when they were asked, do you really think that you should be providing materials for gender expansive 2 and 3-year-olds? And they said, yes, well, yeah, we stand behind it because loving, belonging, we want to be kind. We want to, there's 2-year-olds that know their gender. It's insanity. It's insanity.
Well, it's meant to
And
confuse children, and it's meant to blunt their natural instincts of safety. And, you know, the same instincts that have kept us going for millennia, they're trying to say blunt that in the name of kindness. I mean, Alvin Louis with Courage as a Habit does a great job of talking about how we need to embrace exclusion. I mean, this is ridiculous. No more of the inclusivity. It's insane because they want you to include everything that is in conflict with biology, with personal safety, and with your family's values. Quite frankly, with simple ethics and morality. That's where we are. And the teacher union, the largest teacher union in the country, is pushing this, and they are training teachers to do this, to have this be, like Dan said, this is their noble cause. They're going to save children from bigoted parents by indoctrinating them. And I feel sorry for a lot of us who have family members who are maybe of the older generation of teachers, where they're very sad to see the profession take this horrific turn. But as those teachers retire, and many of them, I mean, principals are retiring the first minute they can get out of education because they're really sad with what it has become. But as the old guard of teachers leave, they're being replaced with teachers who are indoctrinated in K through 12 and in college and are being taught that this is the way to be a teacher in the classroom, is to indoctrinate kids.
Dan, you can see this handout that's up here, and you can see Republicans, their arsenal of racist dog whistles, mobilizing their base with race and transphobic tropes and all this. As a lawyer, what do you make of this? Is the NEA, this is the professional development, and I know that Will has filed cases because of professional development just like this.
Yeah. You know, it goes back to they're spending time on this sort of stuff at the expense of not teaching your kids how to read and write. I mean, it's you know, one of the things that I would, you know, on this sort of like Republican, Democrat sort of who are the enemies? Let's get the enemies. Now, you know, a school district is of course allowed to have its own speech called government speech. So a government can take certain positions that we would disagree with. Government can say things that, you know, can put up flags that we don't agree with. Can make public statements on topics that we oppose. You know, President Biden was saying things all the time that we didn't agree with. It didn't mean that he as the president couldn't say those things. So school district can say, you know, hostile things, but at some point it becomes hostile to preventing a child's own freedom of speech, or forcing that child to speak, which would be compelled speech, or interfering again with parental rights to direct the upbringing, the religious upbringing of your child.
And there was a big
So
win in Ohio, right? About that was a case that just was announced.
yes, yeah, that's the defending ed case from the Sixth Circuit. It's called Parents Defending Education versus Olentangy. It's Olentangy School District. So in that case, there was a school district policy against bullying and harassment, which allowed punishment of school children for, quote, knowingly using pronouns contrary to a student's gender identity. And so parents sued, claiming freedom of speech. They lost, and they lost again. And the case was taken up by all the judges on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So 17 judges heard the case at once. It's called en banc, when the whole Court of Appeals hears it. And 10-7, that was the vote. The vote was 10-7 to strike down the policy based on freedom of speech. So the legal issue with pronouns in schools is whether the speech at school is disrupting, causing a material and substantial disruption. So you can think of a circumstance in which a student at school was saying things that was basically just disrupting the class, right? You could punish that student. You can punish students for disrupting the class. You can punish students for disrupting the school. But this started back in the 1960s in a case called Tinker versus Des Moines. And in the Tinker case, little Mary Beth Tinker, who was 15 years old, she wanted to wear a black armband to school to oppose the Vietnam War. So bless her heart, opposing the Vietnam War, exercise core First Amendment freedom of speech issues. And her brother were suspended from school from just wearing black armbands. That case went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court famously said, it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. So students don't shed their constitutional rights when they walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so the test has always been, since that case in the 1960s, has been, does the conduct actually cause a material and substantial disruption? Well, this school district in Olentangy, they didn't even put on any evidence. They just said, well, bullying is bad, harassment is bad. And so we're just going to have this blanket policy that if you call a transgender girl the wrong pronoun, then you are going to be suspended. And they didn't put on any evidence that actually there was disruption caused, which is their burden. They are the government. Schools are the government. They have to prove that that their interests override the interests of the student. And so that's really the case in the Sixth Circuit now. And I would say, like, going forward, we have to be, we as, conservative parents have to be careful and acknowledge that there are times when wrong pronoun use could bully or harass a student. You can imagine a circumstance in which there is a transgender child and students are literally bullying that child and harassing them day to day, calling them names, calling them the true pronouns on purpose, contrary to the student's wishes, and it causes the young child to have a substantial disruption in that child's education. So it's not a black and white thing. We need to be sensitive to the fact where we can't allow, we don't want our kids bullying other kids. But also we don't want the government forcing our kids to say things that are not true. So I think we have to be sensitive to both sides of that debate.
I would agree with you, Dan. I think the concern is that we already have policies in place to not bully or harass students, right? There's just this hyperfixation on gender identity. And I can tell you in a district here in Illinois, a male teacher was going to come back at the start of the school year after being there for years and wanted to be addressed as a female and had a new name. And the school district produced a script that staff was supposed to use with, in this case, a K-5 school. And I think it traversed a very dangerous pathway of dictating the free speech of students by saying the students were going to have to call him by certain names and certain pronouns. And I'll have to send you the script that came around internally. It was leaked to us, but I think that this is a very, it's a very fine line. And I just think it's a shame that this is where we are, where young children are being told to blur the lines. And it's a sticky situation legally from a school district standpoint. I recognize that they don't want to get sued, right? But parents, at the very least, I mean, my advocacy airs on parents have to at least know what is happening. They have to know this is not hyperbole. I mean, you have the largest teacher union in the country pushing this stuff into the classrooms. Parents have to be the ultimate barrier and have to talk to their children at a very young age. And hey, it might be worth, especially if you have a high school student, for them to have maybe practiced, hey, Tinker versus Des Moines, you cannot control my free speech, to just have that ready to go if teachers are starting to coerce students. But we have to talk to our children from a very young age and be the barrier, because this is happening. And I know a lot of parents are worried, but the more you can talk to your children about it, the better prepared they'll be.
I'm going to take a moment to introduce another guest, Gates Garcia. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, what's up, Scarlett? Can you hear me? Hey, guys.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Hear you good. And Gates lives in the free state of Florida. So boo.
Congratulations.
Yeah, my wife is on the State Board of Education, so I've only been on for 30 seconds or so, but it sounds like that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about education, the NEA, and all of this stuff. Now, you're in Florida. Just because you're in Florida, that doesn't mean that parents can just, oh, hey, I'm in Florida. I don't have to be involved at all. I'm in a red state. I'm on Google or whatever. Like, you still have to be involved.
Yeah, I would say that in some ways, being in a state like Florida that is so free and such a good example puts more pressure on us, because we're winning in this state and the left doesn't like winners. And when we win, the more we win, the more under attack we are. It's hard to fight for ideas. It's harder to keep them. And so, yeah, I mean, we're the freest state when it comes to education. We're the freest state when it comes to a lot of things. We've rolled back a lot of the nonsense that was in schools. And I just, and look, I'm guilty of the same thing, right? Like we want to get so many things out of schools. I raise my hand on that. I want to get all of it out too, but we have lost some things that need to be in schools. So it's one thing to talk about sort of getting the junk out, but we need to get the good back in. And this will sound like I'm going a little bit off topic, but I'm not. And I'll bring it full picture because I'm very fired up about Gen Z right now. I'm 40 years old, so I'm sort of like a middle-aged millennial. And my kids are Gen Alpha, 11, 8, and 5. And December 19th, we're having number 4, if all continues well. So, my generation is the one that's going to come up in the country that's shaped by Generation Z, and they are going awry. And we see all of the rhetoric and all of the nonsense that they're promoting right now. And I am incredibly empathetic to some of their ills. Housing has never been more unaffordable for them. There's never been a generation to start off in a level of debt that they have more debt at the beginning of their life than most people do at the end of their lives. Dating is hard. And I used to shun these things, but then I went and looked at the research. Gen Z women are more liberal than they've ever been, and Gen Z men are more conservative than they've ever been. And a big reason for that, I believe, is because of what's been in schools and what's been taught to these people, that gender is not what it should be, and that men are evil and women, shouldn't start families and all that sort of stuff. And then where I'm really going with this is back to what needs to be in the schools. So this whole generation, not the whole generation, that's very unfair. Let me take that back. A part of this generation, certainly the online part, is going around praising Hitler, all these anti-Semitic tropes and whatnot. And at first it really angered me, but now it frustrates me because I'm not even sure they know who Hitler is, because I did the work of going and talking to them. I was at Columbia this week and Penn this week speaking on campus, and I asked them about their high school experience. These kids never learned who Hitler was. They weren't taught the Holocaust. I was taught Western civilization. So those comments have more meaning to me than they do to them. So I'm so proud of all the work that the state of Florida and many other states around the country have done to dismantle and roll back all the nonsense in schools. It's time to replace it with true, good, and beautiful things again, the things that I and probably all of you learned when we were in high school.
Dan, you kind of alluded to that where you said, there's all these bad things, but maybe working with our boards, working with our legislators, trying to get good things back in, should there be some different approaches to take that could be more successful?
Yeah, I definitely think that. And rolling back the clock to 2020, so we filed the first lawsuit ever in the country against a school district that had a secret transition plan. And that was in February of 2020. It's almost been 6 years. That was against Madison Metropolitan School District. Mm-hmm. And before that, people didn't know this was going on. People never were talking about it. And after we filed that one, and then we filed the one against Kettle Moraine in 2021, what we saw in Wisconsin, that's when I started talking to you, Scarlett, in Wisconsin, was when you were running for Mequon School Board. I remember saying, hey, we have all these liberal school boards in red counties. Why aren't we flipping them? And parents got involved. And the Kettle Moraine School District, which the first lawsuit, successful lawsuit against a secret transition plan, we filed and got an injunction on behalf of Tammy Fournier and her daughter. Tammy is now on the Watertown School District. The Kettle Moraine School District is completely flipped red. They're all conservatives. The Waukesha School District, all red. Yep. And that parents just got involved and they paid attention. They paid attention to off-year elections. And so now sort of like our second step is equipping parents with materials to advocate for themselves. I pitched this already at will-law.org/parents. We've got opt-out forms. We've got letters that you can take to your teacher. We have materials for teachers to use so that teachers can say, like, this is how we're going to handle opt-outs in our class. Mm-hmm. We also have our school board policies that are nationwide, that once you're on the school board, you can, schoolboardpolicies.org, you can go in and take these to the school board and say, these are the things we want. We want more transparency. We want more, we want you to do curriculum in this way. We want this curriculum to be taken out or this to be added in. We want, more parental notifications in this area, that area. So we just got tons and tons of policies that people are using around the country. They're taking to the school board or they're getting on the school board. So I think like engaging with them, like legally we're battling and we're winning and we're moving the ball down the court, but still going, being engaged in the system, running for school board, talking to school board members is really, really the way to go.
And once they're on, we can't leave them, because I've heard a lot of conservative school board members say, I get on and then no one shows up, right, Sonja? No one shows up anymore. It's like, oh, we won. And then you're leaving these board members, some who maybe you've recruited, and they're newer to all of this and they've agreed to run. And then you're leaving them high and dry, getting attacked, because the left still brings, their band of crazies around and activists, and they've got unions and they've got all of this money and all of these outside C3, C4 PAC groups that come in, and then they're kind of stuck there, and it's demoralizing, and it's not something that they want to continue to do if they don't have the community support. And if you're always criticizing and not offering solutions. Now, like to what Gates was saying, in Wisconsin, we passed bipartisan legislation on teaching the Holocaust in classrooms. And that's something, because if kids don't even know what the Holocaust is, what happened, and they don't know who Hitler is, which I totally believe, because Sonja, you could tell us in California that in one of the top universities in this country, ranked 27, they've just discovered that 20% can't do second grade math, and even 60% or so can't do 8th grade math, and they have to do remedial math. So so they're not learning math. They're not learning history. All the teachers unions and professional development is on, gender stuff, and they're not focusing on the right things. They're focusing on SEL and feelings, and they look at education through the lens of race and privilege. So you're privileged if you can do honors math. So we're going to take that away because that's white supremacy. All these ridiculous ideas are dumbing down education. So Sonja, first, respond to what I said about California, and then Gates, I'll let you respond too.
Yeah, it was discovered that 1 in 8 students were needing remedial math. I mean, but that's the system that has been set up. I mean, we keep telling people it is literally millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that are spent in our education system to push ideologies. Nothing about helping kids, get better at reading, writing, and math. I could tell you our district faces challenges all the time, including financial challenges, because we're doing the right thing. In California and in many states that are doing the wrong thing, they award people who are failing kids. I mean, we could just take Title I, created back I think it was in the 60s. And it was created to get districts and school to have kids get better results. The results keep declining, and we keep throwing money at it. And we're over here like, why do you keep throwing money at something that isn't working, right? I know Stanford, when they did a study, they showed our district as a recovery model from COVID to now, increasing our numbers. Is it hard? Absolutely. But I know just our test results came out recently, our Smarter Balance test results, and most of our kids are in the 60 percentile for reading. Again, I'm not happy about it because still 40% aren't, but I'm excited that even with the challenges, we're headed in the right direction. And what does that mean? The activists that you're talking about are being put in their place. We're allowing the experts to do their job, even when they come after us with lawsuits for not pushing these things in the classroom. So it can be done. Again, to me, we're failing students. We have created this as adults. We are responsible for them going into these, 4-year colleges, this prestigious colleges, and needing remedial math. That's adults, responsibility. And again, when are we going to slap it down? I mean, we could talk about the math problem. Math throughout the nation, the results are embarrassing, right? And we literally in our own district are being looked at by people who are doing studies, and that's in California, because we're taking all these standards. And we know if you're in the education field, there is way too many standards, and we're identifying the critical ones, and we're being relentless in the classroom to have kids pick up those, those standards that we identified as the critical ones, and just pushing it. By 3rd grade, we shouldn't have a student move forward without having to give them the tools. And why aren't they reading? Why aren't they understanding basic math skills, right? Why aren't they understanding these standards? And again, I think we have an opportunity as a nation to embrace that. And these things, these ideologies that the unions are pushing, they are unfortunately watering down what we need to be doing. I think that there's hope. We talk about board members. Again, we're in California. The unions, they put tons of money into going after board members like ourselves, but we're proof in California with a 5-0 board. I mean, I heard our friend here in Florida, we have Bridget Ziegler, who is one of my battle partners for many, many years, and she's in Florida, and she's telling me board members on her own board in Florida are completely leftist, right? But here we are. I know I love this thing because I was on Trace talking about this, the 1 in 8 freshmen. But in California,
with Ryan Walters, you guys did a great job.
Well, we're trying to get, honestly, teachers to understand their union is not protecting them. When you elect good board members, they're going to protect you. It's really embarrassing for the unions when the teachers are coming to people like me, asking me for help, asking me, hey, we need these tools, when that's their union's job to advocate for that, right? That means their unions are failing them. Why are you giving them thousands of dollars a year to do what? Let me show you what they're doing. They're suing districts like us because of getting sexually explicit material out. They're suing districts like us for notifying and affording parents their constitutional right. They're suing districts like us because they're gung-ho on pushing ideologies and confusing children in the classroom and telling them boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and we're going to let this chaos happen in the restrooms and put kids on safe. They're suing districts that are doing the right thing, but they're using your money to do that. So,
right. Well, and China doesn't have teacher unions, and they're not talking about gender identity in the classroom. And that's why we're importing college students from China, because they know how to do math. And President Trump basically admitted that we're importing foreign students because our own students cannot read and they cannot do math. And it's a tragedy. But University of Illinois school system here in the state of Illinois, which used to be a land grant school, meaning if you own property in the state, you got into the college. Now it is overrun by foreign students. Because they are probably more proficient at math and reading, but they also have the money to pay the tuition costs. So there's no chance. I'm a graduate from there. I met my husband there at University of Illinois. Our children wouldn't get into that school. They're too white. So, this is where we are across the country. Our children do not have proper proficiency for basic math and reading, and we're importing foreign students at record numbers. It's so sad how we have failed. And, I'm glad that you mentioned Gen Z. I have a Gen Z teenager, actually two, one's on the cusp, and then Gen Alpha daughter. I mean, I'm very sad for this young generation. I think they're getting totally left behind. And our country is saying, well, we'll just import, H-1B, we'll just import. And, too bad, so sad. You'll be in debt and good luck.
You'll be in debt with a degree that is communications. And what are you going to do with it? My son just graduated from medical school, and I can tell you, there were a lot of foreign students.
Can I hop in here, Scarlett?
Yes, go ahead.
So two issues, and we're talking about both of them. The first is sort of education levels, right? Like, I'm convinced that we're raising, I had a notion that we were raising the most uneducated generation of all time. And we can talk about whether it's the Holocaust or Western civilization, but hard data is hard data. And you all just, pointed out or emphasized the fact that, 1 in 8 kids need, struggles in math, and 1 in 5 kids can't write. I had Tina Deskovich, y'all's Scarlett, your founder, on my show last week. And we discussed how 1 in 3 kids in America are not at grade level in reading. So I don't know what other industry in the world that doesn't get measured by their outcomes. I mean, there's meritocracies in a lot of industries, but there's not in education. They continue to produce poor results. The results are getting worse, and they're not being held accountable. So there is a solution that we've implemented in Florida to hold them accountable. We talked about money. We talked about resources. Once they start to lose those, they will have to answer the call. They need money and they need resources. And in Florida, we have robust school choice. The rise of classical schools, of homeschooling, of mobility among schools in Florida is the greatest in the country. And that's allowing kids more flexibility and more options to run from these failing schools and get better solutions. That sucks resources out of those schools because they get taxpayer, funding for every student that they have. Now, the pushback on that, which I agree with, is that we can't leave kids behind. So if a large number of students flee those schools, and the poor ones or the low income ones or the unfortunate ones are left in those schools, and they have less resources and they get worse and worse and worse, that is not a good thing. We need to be able to do these things and lift the entire system up. So we've done something else in Florida. We've implemented the Step Up Scholarship. Everyone in Florida has access to an $8,000 a year scholarship to go to the school they want. This is getting kids out of the public school system, into the private school system, into Christian schools, into classical schools, into co-ops, and it's ranked by level of income. So if everyone in the state applied, it would go to the lowest income individuals first, and on and up and up and up. So it actually is built in an appropriate manner where literally no one gets left behind. It's been incredibly successful in Florida. Public schools are scrambling, they're panicking, and at the end of the day, eventually they're going to have to improve their product to attract people and resources back into their schools.
100%. Dan, what about with this kind of, how can we hold schools accountable? I know that the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, they have issued warnings. They've said you're in violation of Title IX. You're in violation of executive orders. You need to be in compliance. In a state like Wisconsin, we could have, 40% of districts are in compliance, maybe more. And some, like in Madison, they are not. They're like, they are thumbing their nose. What can be done? How can we apply that monetary pressure legally so that maybe that, because money talks, I mean, that seems to be one of the only things that a lot of school district administrators care about.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like monetary damages, it is possible to get them versus school districts for violating your rights. School districts are liable under a federal law called 1983, which is a Civil Rights Act. And that actually today, right now, the U.S. Supreme Court is meeting to decide whether to take two cases that are related to this issue, which could actually result in damages against the school district. One is called Little John versus Lean County. It's a Florida case about a secret support plan for a 13-year-old girl. There's a social transition. They deceived the parents, and then the student left the district. The court is going to decide whether a claim for violating the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of your child and direct the healthcare decisions of your child is violated by a secret transition plan. There's another case called Foote versus Ludlow, which is from Massachusetts, where a school counselor and a librarian secretly transitioned an 11-year-old girl. Those two cases, Foote, F-O-O-T-E, and Little John, are being heard in private conference today, and we should know, hopefully on Monday, whether they will take those cases. And those are two cases in which, as I said, if the school district loses, those are Civil Rights Act cases, which means that there could be damages against the school district and, of course, attorney's fees. And we've sued a number of school districts, and under federal law, we can get our attorney's fees back, and we have, which can amount to several $100,000. So yeah, there can be a monetary incentive to going after these school districts in civil rights cases. And on the other hand, the biggest tool in the toolbox is pulling away federal funding.
Yep.
So the Department of Education has the keys to federal funding for schools. So a violation of Title IX by a school district or a violation of Title VI. Title VI deals with race. Title IX deals with sex. And those violations can result in a school district just losing their money. And so in Wisconsin, I think it's about 10 to 12% of an entire school district's budget is federal. So that would get them, in a lot of trouble if they lose all their federal funding. So that plus civil rights lawsuits can be a financial incentive for them to do the right thing.
So the civil rights lawsuits, that would mean that the districts would have to fear that if they secretly transition a child and the parents bring a case and they win, that they can file now damages and they can get their legal fees compensated. That would be huge, because finally, I think they look at us and they look at the activists, and then they look at the parents and they think, even though I'm inclined to agree with the parents, I'm more afraid that what the activists will do to me. I'm more afraid of the pain that they can apply. And so they have to think, what's more painful, like losing a lot of money or just dealing with these activists that are going to bug me? And I think we could finally have a tool in blue states like Illinois where they may say, like, I don't care if we lose the money, but they do. They care. They just don't think it's actually going to happen. And so eventually it has to happen. Like, funding needs to be removed in order to finally have them come into compliance, because otherwise they're just like, whatever, not listening to what you say.
Yeah, exactly. And I would just say, unfortunately, I have to jump off here, but I would say that these possible damages against school districts for transitioning a child, I've heard that in the medical malpractice field that they start the negotiations at $10 million, against doctors when doctors have done surgeries on kids. And most of these are called social transitions, which just means changing your name and pronouns. But we have a case where there's been a binder given to a kid, which is not in my opinion, is not a social transition. A binder is a medical transition.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you have medical transitioning going on and these irreparable harm to these kids, I think the dollar amount is gonna go through the roof. And so it may be, you get a couple of $50 million verdicts against a small school district. That would be enough to get their attention.
Sure
right.
would.
I know you have to go. I did want to ask you, you can think about this later. I wanted to talk about the NEA, the fact that it has a federal charter and what that means legally. Like, what can we do if the NEA is going to do this stuff? Is there something that we can do? Why do they have a federal charter? They're the only union that does. So
we should talk about that, and I'd love to talk about the in January they're arguing the girls in sports cases, so we can come back on to talk about that.
We'll do that another time because those were my other two questions because those are big. All right, thanks Dan for coming on.
Bye.
Thank you.
So Gates, this is all, you're in Florida, so when you hear some of the stuff that's happening right now, even though Trump's been elected, thank goodness, and the executive orders, but right now there are blue states where chest binders are given out, where secret transitioning is still happening, where they still have the flags everywhere. They're still pushing the gender unicorn. They still have the boys competing in Michigan. Just this week, I believe is on Wednesday, there was a state volleyball meet in which a biological boy was playing against the girls, and everyone knew it, and Outkick talked about it and everything. What do you think when you hear what's happening as a dad of girls?
Yeah, it's criminal. I mean, it really is. We're robbing children, I would say more girls than boys, of their ability to fully mature into women. And the ramifications of this are going to be so far downstream in society that people aren't willing to discuss them or talk about them today. I mean, we are moving so far in the wrong direction. And it's almost like we live in two different countries. You come to Florida and you think you're in one country, and you go to a state like California and you think you're in a different country. And I mean, I'm all for, states' rights and what's not, but there's also truth and nature and just eternal things that should be universal, no matter where on the earth you are. And I mean, I talk to people dealing with this in other states, and it's just like the twilight zone to me, because we don't deal with any of that here. And the reason we don't is because we took a stand against it. And by the way, like this is what always blows my mind is overwhelmingly people are on our side on this issue.
Yes.
This is not one of the big, partisan issues. I mean,
right.
You
I say it's 95-5.
Yeah, you have radicals out there that obviously are in the 5, but this isn't a 50-50 issue. This isn't even a 70-30 issue.
Nope.
So it's very confusing to me how we can't conquer this in all of these states. And we're now seeing it take a stronger effect on young men. We've come after young girls, but when there's no young girls left, what happens to the young men? And then what happens to the ability for everyone to start a nuclear family, which is the American dream and built this country and is the foundation that it sits on, along with the church? So, it doesn't seem harmful to that 5% that you just mentioned right now, or it seems empathetic, but you're actually the reverse of empathetic. You're actually, when you have empathy for someone, yes, you try to put yourself in their shoes. Yes, you try to understand the issues they're going through. But if you care about that person, you actually help them see a better way out of it if they need that. And right now, we're just giving into the whims of children because it's instant gratification. And we live in an instant gratification society. I think social media has rewired our brains to constantly seek dopamine, constantly feel to seek happiness. Now, happiness is different than joy. Joy is long-term. Happiness is transactional. And anger and fear feeds the mind, and anger and fear are short-term emotions. Okay, joy is a long-term emotion, and all this stuff comes from a situation of anger and fear. It's the girl that's angry at the world or the boy, and either one, and thus wants to transition because this world's not fair and I need to get out of this world. Well, the other thing I'll add, because it plays into all my points, is we're just now seeing enough data. We've been in this long enough that we're seeing enough data where this is now becoming people that want to go back and reverse their gender transition. They've been in it long enough now. It's becoming the leading cause of suicide in our country. So when this was new to us, We were living through it like everybody else. Obviously, we knew it was wrong, but we didn't know all of the long-term ramifications of it. We're now seeing them. Kids, when they move into adulthood, realize I made a major mistake and I made an irreversible mistake, and it's going to affect the rest of my life, and they don't want to live anymore. And that breaks my heart. I have a girl, I have 2 boys, I have a girl on the way. It rips my heart out. And the people allowing them to do this and abetting them and enabling them to do this, the doctors, the teachers, the administrators, they don't care about those kids. They care about themselves and what their little corner of society thinks looks good.
Yep. We actually heard a federal judge tell the state in our position on Monday, all these people, the state superintendent, the attorney general, these kids kill themselves and they go on about their life and not give a bat of an eye, right? And that's the truth. They are creating all these harmful laws and policies and pushing them down and actually destroying the bond between a child and parent, which I believe is the most important bond that a child will have in their lives. And that's why they're set down this path of destruction. And I am so grateful for people like Chloe Cole and the rest of them that are speaking out against this criminal act that is happening on children. Again, because like you, I am sorry. I go further than, and so do you guys. You guys are on the same side of the history of being on the right side of the history. We go further than just voicing our opinion. We get in the fight, and we're not going to allow this to children. This is the most criminal, insane thing I've seen happen. Obviously in the history, I would say going back as far as we can, we were taught in school. No kid should be told they're born in the wrong body, and no kid should be mutilated. And I think if anybody knows that and they walk away from that, they're a coward.
Yeah. And I want to add one more thing, because I've been like knee deep in this Gen Z thing, because there's a movement of boys out there that are trying to teach each other how to be men rather than relying on men that have lived experiences to become men. And my generation, as I said earlier, I'm 40. We didn't have the levels of anxiety and depression that Gen Z has. The generation above us didn't have the levels of anxiety and depression. And it's not like they've ticked up a little bit. They've astronomically risen. I mean, it's well over 50% of teens suffer with anxiety and depression. There is one thing that is obvious that has changed since when I grew up and when they're growing up. Social media. When I was growing up, I went upward for the troubles in my life. I went upward for advice. I went to God. I went to teachers. I went to parents. I went to mentors. I went to coaches. This generation goes sideways. They go to one another. They're seeking advice from individuals like themselves who may be in that situation, but haven't come out of that situation, don't have the life experiences to know what's on the other side of it and how you get there. They don't go on social media to become informed. They go on social media to be entertained and to confirm their ideologies. All their algorithms are overwhelmed with telling them what they already think they believe. They're not learning anything new on there. And again, I told you I was on 2 college campuses this week. Now, these are smart kids. These are successful kids, but they're on a big campus, and they have younger siblings. And I asked them, I said, where do you get your news? Because I'm a contributor at Daily Wire. I'm a contributor at Blaze. I read a number of news sources every day. I said, where do you all get your news? What do you read? They go, oh, we go on social media. I said, but where do you get your news? Where do you get your information? They go, just social media. We just, you can get so much in a couple swipes of your finger. And I'm like, man, all that you're getting is based on what you've told the program you want. And then 2, what I believe are foreign adversaries coming in as bots, impressing more junk into your algorithm. I mean, we have other countries that have infiltrated us via social media and are ruining us from the inside. And that has to be talked about more. I believe if social media didn't exist, we wouldn't have the level of gender dysmorphia that we have in this country. They go on social media and they say, oh my gosh, look at all these other people that are doing it. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. Now they can. And it just compounds and it compounds and it compounds. Mm-hmm. And we've got to figure out how to either overwhelm the algorithms with good, one thing I try to do, or figure out a way to dismantle that system and redo it from the beginning.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're devoid of good
fast.
role models.
Go ahead. I just want to say, like, that with I can confirm this with my Gen Z kids. They will be like, Mom, is this true? Did you hear that Trump's doing this? Or did you hear that? I'm like, no, where'd you hear that? Oh, it was on TikTok, social media. Like, no, what news source? Well, it was in the news. And then I immediately send them something like, oh, okay. They're being told this just absolute
and
lie.
and AI is going to make it absolutely worse too. If we think it's bad now, wait till AI, I mean, it already is, but wait till it gets big enough and prevalent enough to be news reporters and writing books, and it's already writing music. Wait till AI really gets in the game, and rather than, it's something we're worried about now, actually something that's actively engaged alongside us in our lives, because kids are going to be watching news clips, or they're going to be watching teenagers transition that are actual AI bots, but we're not going to be able to distinguish the difference between one of them. The other thing they're going to do, which they're already doing, is falling in love with AI. There's AI boyfriends, AI girlfriends. There's all this information out there that sex robots are coming. And, if you like porn, which, by the way, we live in a more porn prevalent generation than we ever have. But if you think porn is bad, wait till porn comes to life, because the robots are coming, and it sickens and scares the hell out of me.
Shannon, I want you to respond, and then I want you both to respond to the news from the Department of Education that they are dismantling. I know that there are some celebrating that, and I see that as good. But when you live in California and Illinois, and you hear that more power is going to be given, or more
I got to hop off,
handed
Scarlett.
over. Oh,
I
thanks.
got to hop
Kate.
off. See you,
Yeah,
ladies. Very nice talking to you.
Not next week, the week after. Let's do it again.
Okay.
I want to talk more about some of the things we were talking about.
Let me know. See y'all.
Bye.
Keep fighting hard. Keep fighting hard.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I like what he's in a red. He has some different topics of concern, because he's in a red state. You notice like the difference that he's in a very red state. So he's seeing some other cultural issues that we don't see as much. So I want to talk to him more about that, because I find that really interesting, where he's dealing with some things that are happening on the right, and ways that I think that woke, and I'm not going to use all the terms, but that there has been infiltration of chaos agents and bad actors that are trying to especially get to young men and really destroy them. But what do you guys think about the announcement from the Department of Education?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Again, I go back to federal government in a position when we had Biden was very dangerous, right, too, for states like ours, because it affirmed everything they were doing. I also agree the education system has been top down, where I think that's where it's creating a lot of chaos too. There's a lot of systems and just money being dumped into things that are not helping our students. So I think people are creating headlines that create fear, that without actually knowing what they're doing and getting involved. I'll use an example, like with our California Department of Ed. It is very top heavy on positions that have no business being positions in education. Again, we are paying over $140,000 a year for someone to continue to develop and just be in charge of putting this PRISM training, the LGBTQ plus, into the school districts. That's just one. Where's our departments that are actually helping and getting the results to help our students, succeed and excel? It isn't. So when they create this fear, oh, we're dismantling, really what they're doing is trying to chop off the extra fat that was never, ever needed. Now, in a blue state, when you're giving it back to the states completely, it is a little concerning and it is a little worrisome. But then again, we have the Constitution. And if we just fight for what's in the Constitution, a lot of this, even though it's going to be a long battle, will be moot, right? Because I really believe a lot of times, unfortunately, they're trying to eliminate our constitutional rights, right? And if we go back to parents' rights, hey, that blankets over a lot of things. So again, I think it's a balance, right? Because even when Biden was in, he was literally trying to change federally Title IX. That's scary, because then states like ours are affirmed in all their state laws that, hey, there is no federal law to bounce back and fight and have protection with.
So basically, like that, at least there would be states where they don't have to comply with the federal government if someone like Biden is in charge. So even though sometimes it's harder when you're in a blue state, at least there's hope in other areas.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at California. They are priding themselves at all these lawsuits with federal government right now, but federal government, the lawsuits that they're engaged in with, making sure kids have a great education, free from ideologies, making sure our streets are safe, these kinds of things, right? California is so excited that they're fighting against common sense things, right? But it's also exposing it that they're fighting these things, and they shouldn't be fighting these things. These are the reasons why we voted these people in. I mean, fair elections. That's a huge thing in California because we have so much unfair and cheating going on, and they're fighting against those things. But I say literally, if people don't start paying attention to local, I don't think we're ever going to get anywhere. I think your local positions that are being challenged for doing the right thing are the ones that are actually saving and holding the floodgates from going further. They are not the sexy seats that get a lot of money. Obviously, most of them don't get any money at all. Maybe a stipend that helps cover a little bit of your cost and getting your sanity somewhat back, or trying to get it back. But our local elected seats, our school boards, our city councils, I am begging people to get involved. These positions, look, we can go all day long about how elections are being stolen in your state assemblies, your senates, your Congress. But if we don't start going local where our people, we can build that relationship with them, we're going to lose. We're definitely going to lose. And those are the seats that will eventually, these people will go up to further positions because people are pushing them. They want them, not because anybody's aspiring to be in a position and they want to, carry the torch like Nancy Pelosi and all her family members going down. It's actually people who actually are representing people. And that's the way government should be, right? You are your representative, not your special interest groups voting in your representatives. Unfortunately, in a lot of states, special interest groups hold those seats. And that's where the only way to break the barrier is to get into your local government and pay attention to those seats.
All right. Shannon, your take.
Sure. Well, I'm with Sonja. Local control should be the focus, but it's not as sexy politically, but it is so important. Most of your tax dollars go to your schools and to your local government. So people should be paying attention, and those policies have direct impact on your family. When it comes to the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, before they fully dismantle, I hope that they respond to the 3 federal civil rights complaints I have filed on behalf of Awake Illinois here in Illinois for race hustling violations by the Illinois State Board of Education and Title IX violations in 2 different school districts where boys are permitted into girls' sports and into girls' bathrooms and private spaces. So for a blue state that is broke, like Illinois, that's the reality. We're a junk bond rated state, basically. If you're beholden to the federal government and you're in a contract with the federal government to get those funds, then with President Trump in office, I mean, I've hedged my bets that Secretary McMahon and the federal government is going to respond and say, if you are in violation of this contract with our federal government, you will abide by Title IX and by Title VI and all the titles, or you don't get the money. And I have to express frustration because I understand government moves slowly, but this should be the lowest hanging fruit. I mean, I get it. We have illegal immigrants in the state that makes national news, but we have 2 million children in K through 12 schools here, and our state is broke. They take federal funding. So long as that is the contract, let's leverage the power that we have. And look, if you're going to take away all the federal funding and leave a state like Illinois to figure it out, feel the pain now, feel it later. But Illinois is broke. And if they're going to be funding woke teacher union activism trainings and all of this race hustling and everything else, then burn it down. And then they'll appropriate funds where they need to. And school districts will have to actually do a zero up accounting like the rest of the world and appropriate money to the classroom and to where it's going to actually educate our children and not indoctrinate them. So again, I look forward to seeing our 3 federal civil rights complaints investigated promptly, because otherwise, what are we talking about? Why are we celebrating that Trump is in office and not Biden if we're not actually going to hold blue states like Illinois and Pritzker and all these woke bootlickers accountable? I'm ready for it. It's overdue. Let me know.
Yep. And I was in DC. Linda McMahon spoke, and I think it's honorable that she took a job that she wants to, that she took on a position that she is trying to eliminate. and sticking true to that and starting this process of, and it's not even dismantling, they're just moving departments where they should be right now. So I know you don't have to get hair on fire like, oh, they're just moving things back to where they belong, because there's certain departments that got moved into the Department of Education and they don't belong there, and they could be covered by
Health and Human Services,
yes.
free reduced lunch. Yeah, all of those things.
Yes.
Sure. But regardless of where it moves to, if you're not going to hold states accountable to the contract with the federal government and civil rights protections, then we're kind of kidding ourselves, right? So harness the power where it can be yielded. And yes, if it goes back to blue states and Pritzker's in office and we have to deal with it, then so be it. I'm ready for zero up budgeting across the board, local, state, and federal.
So I'll put this out there for you guys. So I think this next fiscal year, because a lot of the funds for the prior year were already allotted, so the Trump administration could not hold those back. I think he tried in some cases in California, right? And since the funds were already allotted, they had to be released. So would we see the first test of withholding funding now this next fiscal year? Is that when we can see that there's going to be states that are going to put in their budgets, they're going to put in their requests, and now it will be up to the Trump administration? I don't know, maybe you guys would know better about the timeline.
I have no idea. I would hope that's the case, Scarlett, because again, why did we get President Trump and Secretary McMahon in there, right? We really need their help. We need their air cover in states like Colorado, Illinois, California, New York, Minnesota. I mean, I could go on. And so there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of optimism. Some communication would be welcome. And look, when you have Newsom and you have Pritzker and you have these woke governors setting their sights on 2028, show us some air cover now. Let's start getting some momentum and some wins and some rhetoric that's going to say, hey, in Illinois' case, 2 million children in K through 12 schools. We want you guys to get the federal funding, but you're going to have to abide by the title protections of students or else. I'm ready for that message. Sooner
So
the better.
Erin, imagine, you do this, you're in Colorado. So we have to be real about what the messaging will be. If the funds are withheld, like universally statewide, now it's an election year, and Democrats, we can't feed the children. We don't have school lunch. We don't have, we can't fund the Title I programs. We can't, for developmentally delayed kids with IEPs, 504 plans, they're not getting the funding. You know what they'll do. So you withhold funds, there's going to be that risk of we lose a whole messaging war. We just kind of went through that with the government shutdown. So Erin, I'll let you answer first. Erin's back. Hi, Erin.
Thanks. I had a kid pick up. So we're back. So there's a 5-year-old in the background. So Colorado's a unique position because they anticipated this and already accounted for the loss of federal funding. And I don't know how it works in other states, but in Colorado, less than 10% of funding in our schools comes from the federal government. It's primarily state and local funded. So they actually on this past election cycle put on 2 resolutions, LL and MM, that actually, and everyone voted on it. In November, we voted yes, that take our state tax dollars to pay for meals for every single child in the state, whether or not they need free lunch. So the taxpayers of Colorado continue to vote for these things. It's the same with the local level when they put out a mill levy request, and all of my community members vote yes on the mill levy and just give them more of our local funds. So Colorado anticipated this. It was the same with the Medicaid funds. They put in a bill at this last legislative session that put our state taxpayer dollars towards transgender procedures in anticipation of the Trump administration cutting those Medicaid funds at the federal level. So I just urge people to pay attention to what your state is doing and be prepared in states like Colorado and Illinois and California, because they know they're going to lose federal funding. And what we've done is thumbed our nose at the federal government and said, go ahead and take it. It's less than 10% anyway, and we'll just get these dummy taxpayers to account for the money that you took away from us. So they're almost like digging their heels in and doubling down and giving their middle finger to the federal government and screwing those of us who are state and local taxpayers. And like I said, people continue to vote for this. So be prepared for that. They were one step ahead of the federal government and the Trump administration.
We give every student the same thing. California and Colorado constantly link arms.
Yeah.
And, well, in Wisconsin, there would be uproar to lose federal funding because we do have we still have Republican Assembly and Senate, and so they've kind of they've held the line even with Tony Evers as governor. So we're kind of just in the standstill. Nothing moves. It's just a stalemate. So things aren't getting worse, but they're not getting better because every innovative piece of legislation gets vetoed. And then what the governor tries to do doesn't get passed. So we're kind of in this place, but the Department of Instruction, the head of our Department of Education, is not appointed, someone who is elected, and she's terrible. She said pronouns save lives. She's very, very woke, and she will not go into compliance. The governor's not going to agree to get the tax credit from the big, beautiful bill. They're going to hold the line on all the things. So we've got maybe half of our districts in compliance, half aren't in compliance. It would be tricky to lose funding here because our governor or our State Department of Education won't go into compliance. But I don't know. Our WIAA is in compliance technically, and so that's good, but we have school districts that are absolutely turning a blind eye to male players that are on all female teams. They allow males into girls. We just had a big, huge story where they allowed a 60-year-old pedophile into the girls' changing area of Case High School in Racine because of board policy. So, I mean, we've got issues here, and there are areas that absolutely should lose funding because they're not in compliance. I just wondered if they could do it. I wish that there was a way they could do it by district, like every district that's not in compliance loses funding, and those that are would be eligible for the funding. But I'm not the lawyer. That's where I have to ask Dan.
And I do think, like in states like mine, where they don't care if they lose federal funding, we, the parents, still have the power to hit them in the wallet where it does count. And so I maintain that mass exodus of students and litigation are the weapons we have at our disposal when the federal government's not going to be able to protect us from what our school districts are doing, what our state is doing. So, they're ready to lose those funds, but what they're not prepared for is to lose that $14,000 per student as parents continue to pull their kids out of the system. And I really think that's how we get their attention and change the behavior.
So are you guys seeing that in your state? Because it's happening here in Wisconsin. Are you seeing an exodus that the numbers that, they do that first Friday count, that every year they try and say, oh, this year it's going to be different, but they are losing kids across the board.
Yeah, they're bleeding enrollment in Illinois. But, I think that's why all the illegal immigrant and sanctuary status, that's meant to replace the Illinois students with a whole new fabric of illegal immigrants. And, it's just not sustainable because, again, Illinois is broke. And when you look at, Gates mentioned Gen Z, these Gen Z kids are fleeing Illinois for SEC schools, for Southeast, states. Yep. The taxpayer base is just fleeing the state of Illinois. So, yes, up to a certain degree, they're going to want to see enrollment go up. But that's why they came after homeschool with House Bill 2827 in Illinois, because they saw that that's the fastest growing education sector. And also these pods and these co-ops. So they want those kids in government schools. They're losing their cash cows. Yeah. And you mentioned lawsuits. We have families that are now filing in federal court in Illinois for Title IX violations and for other infractions of parental rights. And so I do think that coming at them from all angles is just where we've arrived to. And I think it's a shame. But you mentioned the messaging. I think that's a very important part in a midterm election year, where who's going to come out with the best messaging? And I think that President Trump's administration, just like he did with a lot of the Title IX stuff when he was campaigning, leverage the people in blue states who are fighting this. Leverage Sonja, leverage Erin, leverage the faces and the voices that have been fighting this from the ground level. That's going to be key. It really is. And I think you can call a massive bluff against Newsom, against Pritzker, against all of these radicals, but leverage the grassroots. That would really be my advice, Scarlett, is if you want to win on the message, you're going to need strong messengers. And what better than the people who have been in the thick of it, than the families that have been harmed by these policies and by institutions that have failed our families. So I think that's really going to be what's key, because we have momentum on our side. And I think we have incredible victories that can still come about for all these kids, but leverage the good messengers.
I agree. And there were a few bright spots in November, very few. And there were some school board races. Moms for Liberty, out of 32, we won 17 races. And the reason, and there was a Daily Wire article about it, the overwhelming reason for success was the focus on gender ideology in schools, radical critical race theory, and the dropping test scores in math and reading while increasing more DEI. And when that was a focus, there were wins. And we don't have a lot of money, but the messaging was on target.
Yep. I agree with you. Look, Moms for Liberty gave me the first state endorsement,
Yes.
right? And I am so proud of that as I run for state superintendent. It's the moms that I believe are going to really, truly save. And because we're on the ground. And like Shannon said, we're the ones that are in this fight. We are the ones that develop the trust with those people that technically usually don't go to the polls, right?
Yes.
And the messaging is so important. I mean, we know in California, one of the top 3 things that keeps polling the highest is boys and girls sports. Well, get moms and dads to understand your state laws are allowing this to happen. And unless you start electing people like myself into positions of, elected positions, we're not going to change this.
Right.
Look, in a position, you could do so in a school board seat, you could do so many things, including exposing what's going on that parents have no clue. I go back to 6 years ago. I was on the school campus almost full time. Art mom, PE mom, room mom, anything that was needed and not funded, which is a lot of things that are needed in California. I was that mom, but I had no clue the agenda that was being and the policies that were being set incrementally to eliminate moms like me out of my own child's life. Right. And when I realized, it was like, oh no. And then I'm told, no, the special interest seats, special interest groups own those seats. Look, they spent $150,000 on me how many years ago? 3.5 years ago. And we have been the biggest thorn in their side. We need to start banding together. Local is where you win the elections, but local is where you're going to make the most impact right now in what we're dealing with. Yeah. And then we move up. Look, I believe California in 2026, June, it's the only constitutional seat that California allows to win outright. We have 7 complete leftists that came out punching and saying that they are going to allow boys and girls sports. I am so glad they did that, because in June, we're going to get the 50+1 if all moms and dads band together and get their butts to the polls and show we are a force to be reckoned with. And guess what happens to the rest of the nation when you have a state superintendent in California, like you guys know, Colorado, Illinois, come on, you're my battle partners when it comes to crazy. We all compete against each other, or at least our.
Oh, she's frozen. Here, we'll get back. We'll get back to. I was just kind of going through. I said Daily Wire. It's Daily Caller. What motivates people? School board winners say gender policies drove big gains. And so it's still the message. And I was just talking in DC to,
There you are.
I spoke at a center right coalition, and there's a big group of people that they network, from all over DC, different organizations, different campaigns, all that. And I'm like, this is the issue. We cannot be afraid of these culture war issues. Yes, crime is a big issue, illegal immigration, yes, but we have to focus on these bread and butter issues. We have to focus on the economy. We have to focus on what's happening with Gen Z and opportunities, but we have to talk about what's happening in education. It is a crisis. We are in a crisis. Our kids, our graduating seniors, can't fraction beyond 2. Okay, like they read the report of what's in California, and it's the same everywhere. I've talked to professors in Wisconsin, professors in Minnesota. They have said that they have to spend the first 2 years doing remedial training of college students. So
Yeah.
basically, the first 2 years of college have to be the 4 years of high school that they never got. And these are kids that went to good schools. If your kid is really bright and in an honors class and taking college credits, they will come to college prepared, not over prepared, just prepared. It used to be when my son graduated, he had 33 college credits. He could graduate college in 3 years. That was 2017. Things have changed that much in less than a decade. This ideology is absolutely, it's a cancer. It just kills. It's a virus that just kills an ecosystem. And it's so easy to take things down and really hard to build things. I'll let you guys respond.
I just feel like the emperor has no clothes with this issue. Like our first step was to expose, and we've done a really good job of educating each other. 5 years ago, if you'd asked me what's my biggest hurdle, it's willful ignorance and apathy from parents. But I really think they're starting to wake up to this issue. When you see the polling, it's like 90-10, even from the New York Times.
Mhm.
So it makes sense that this was the issue that drove wins in the school board races, because parents have paid attention now. They're over it. Even the kids are over it. They're over having LGBTQ shoved down their throat. The young men, especially, I have this theory that it's like so mainstream now that teenagers are by nature rebellious, that it's now the rebellious thing to be a conservative Christian teenager. Like they're over it. And we
Yep.
have to continue to drive these issues because they, as we've said, they have a stranglehold on our school districts, but parents have had enough and they're finally paying attention to it.
Yeah, we are the rebellion.
Counterculture.
We are the counterculture.
Mm.
I mean, everything else, it's like it's so forced. I mean, Disney, like there was some other good news. Disney announced that for the first time in 9 years that they've eliminated DEI, and hopefully they've looked at their profits and they've seen, those numbers go down. Their movies they're not good. You could say they're woke. Yeah, they're woke, but they're not good. They're just not good. They can't story tell anymore. It can't be natural. It's all so forced, and you can feel that. And I think our young people, and I have 5 children, and that's what they say, like, oh, it's so cheesy. It's forced. It's like they're making, those early Christian movies that when I was a teenager, and they're so cheesy, and you're like, but you'd watch them when you were in Sunday school or a youth. Now the major big studios are making movies like that, except for they're woke. They're cheesy. They're just like, that's not even good. Or they're very violent and very sexual with no plots, nothing good. And you leave feeling icky. Like, who wants to pay money, especially with how much it costs to go to a movie these days, to feel bad when you leave?
Yeah, well, it just goes to show how toxic our culture has become. I mean, when I grew up in the 90s, we all had like shared cultural content that we could bond over, whether it was a song or a movie. But that's not the case anymore. And so, Gates mentioned earlier, it's worrisome where some of these kids that are so hungry for culture that resonates with them, they're going to fall into some dangerous traps, right? Just because they are encountering a rebellion of another color. But what will fill that void, right? That's what we have to be worried about as parents. And so, I'm hopeful that this younger generation will become their own heroes, because there aren't enough of them to look up to right now. And I was even talking to my husband about this, like in the 90s, do you remember like Spice Girls and like Lilith Fair? There was so much like female empowerment. And also you saw a lot of pop culture icons getting married. Like that was almost a marketing strategy in and of itself. You had Beckham and Posh Spice. You had, Jennifer and Brad. Like, sure, it could have been a business decision, but pop culture really got around the concept of like dating and marriage. And so how many of our kids can name like a famous wedding or a famous marriage or something in pop culture that has made marriage like, a mainstream thing? It's so sad. These kids can't even date. They can't even look at each other in the eyes and have interpersonal communication. I mean, teachers see this all the time. So I think these kids have a lot of ground to make up, and I'm hopeful that this part of their rebellion is going to be actually congregating and, not being on Netflix, not being on their phones, but hopefully getting together and finding their people. That's why I know a lot of these kids, if you go around our community, upper middle class community, a lot of these households have SEC signs in their yard. I know it's because these kids are like, I'm done with woke. I'm done with far left progressivism. I'm not going to a blue state. I'm going to go to these Southern schools and find people who share my values and love America and are going to boldly, profess their faith and just find their people. Like, I want these kids to just find their people and live life, get married, find joy. Like, you're probably going to have to leave blue states to do that. I mean, that's just the reality. We parents that are raising kids here, like, we're in the thick of it. But I know a lot of these kids are rightfully looking around and being like, why am I going to pay these taxes to be around people who don't share my values? Why would I send my kids into a system where my mom and dad have been paying so much money and they're having to sue and fight? Like, some of these kids are smart enough to figure out, I'm out of here, and God bless them. Go be free in another state. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're going to be the ones to have to, consolidate among people who share their values and find a happier way of life.
They're going to have to be somewhere where there's economic opportunity. They can afford to buy a house. I mean, now I have to say, because my daughter lives in Florida, she'll be moving back to Wisconsin once her husband is done with service. The affordability in Florida, there's still struggle with those issues. The cost of insurance is high. Home ownership houses are expensive. And
there's
so
a bubble there right now, but keep an eye on that in the next year or two. I think you're going to start to see a sort of reset in certain real estate markets. But Florida has had a bubble.
And it's worth, if you like, there's so much positive, but nothing's perfect, because everyone is moving to a place. Well, then it can be more difficult to find housing, and then prices can go up. So I think a lot of different things need to stabilize and settle. I'm very anecdotal, but in my area, we are finally seeing homes that first-time home buyers can buy. They're coming on the market. They're coming online. And I know, because we're just eyeing things for my daughter. So this is the first time in a few years where finally some fixer-uppers, some smaller homes, some starter homes, they're coming online and the prices are getting more reasonable. So I think it's a good sign. And once
most of these kids though are going to need help, Scarlett. Most of these kids are going to need help from their parents. I mean, that's just the reality. And the ones who don't get it, they're forced to go to red states. It's just that the taxes in a state like Illinois, like where we live right now, I don't know how a young new family can afford a home. I really don't. I think it's nearly impossible unless you have your parents helping you. And I mean, John and I, we built up our capital. We bought our first home in Arizona in 2006, 20% down payment. Do you remember what happened around that time? The big real estate bust, the bank bust. Yeah, we were surrounded by dirt lots. I mean, we were fortunate to recover, but I don't know how kids today are going to do it without help.
Yep.
And I feel for them, but they're going to have to leave blue states. I mean, again, the taxes are ridiculous. Why would a young person want to start out with all of this debt? It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
The first house we bought was in Virginia. It was an adorable brick, 2-story, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house for $120,000. I mean, can you imagine? Like,
They're done.
And we have to stop putting them on this conveyor belt of you must go to college. And I'm starting to see that
100%.
happen, especially, I mean, AI is a big factor. Like, we need to be encouraging our kids to go into trades. Why would you want to start your life out with $200,000 of debt? Like, that is no way. Of course, you're not going to be able to afford a home. You can't, you're $200,000 in debt. So, and I think actually Linda McMahon has this at the forefront of her agenda to really push the trades over higher education, because that entire system is hijacked. But we as parents have to do a good job of making sure our kids understand you don't have to go to college, that there are only certain professions that require this path. In fact, I'm encouraging my sons to go into trades.
Yeah, that's a big shift right now. But I will say, talking to corporate recruiters and HR, until companies start shifting their hiring model away from the 4-year college, most families still encourage their children. It's like pay to play. You know, it's the cover fee to get into the club for 4-year college degrees, until corporations start really breaking out as outliers and saying, hey, you know, we'll give you an apprenticeship for skills, for training. We will, we will break the mold of the 4-year indoctrination campus. Until that happens, a lot of families still tell their kids that they're going to have to pay the cover fee to get into the club, which is the 4-year college. But it's not for everybody. And, you know, you look at when I was younger, you either went to college or you bartended or you went into the military. Like, those were the 3 things. But now it is becoming more mainstream to go into the trades. And I would hope that school board members can get creative here too and start welcoming the trades into their career fairs and into some of the programming at schools, because high school kids at this time of year, juniors, seniors, are starting to get stressed. And if college is not for them, they are going to get depressed. They are going to get anxious. But if they have a pathway for career success, we do need trades. I mean, HVAC, plumbers, they are printing money. And sometimes it can be a little political. I get that. But you have a skill, you're going to do great. Yeah. A 4-year indoctrination, 6-figure degree in English, stupid.
Yeah. They're trade schools, community colleges, alternatives.
I will tell you, as a school board member, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have my parent point of view, but I also have a school board member point of view, and it's not funded properly. But I do sit as a commissioner member for technical career with 3 other districts, and it is hard to fund the program. But I'm going to tell you 2 different pathways that you can give to a student who might be 4-year bound. Like, let's take an example of a student that came, he's 3 years into a 4-year, but through our program, he was able to get his certificate in the field of pharmacy, right? So we partnered up, and, you know, everything was paid for, his background check, everything was paid for, and he was certificated to work directly in the pharmacy. So while he's going to a UC now to become a pharmacist on that pathway, he's also working across from his UC at CVS. And they are all like, where did you get this? How did you get this at such a young age? And it was through the school district and the programs that we offer. Now let's take another pathway on a child who may, a child, because they're in high school, they're still a child. He's a young man now, but that isn't 4-year bound. And we keep telling them they're 4-year bound. We can have them certificated. Even girls who want to be beauticians, or, you know, guys who want to work in UPS, FedEx, plumbing, electrical, whatever it may be, there's pathways to get them certificated. So right after high school, they are going into these trade unions, and they are making a livable, healthy wage. Even, I mean, in California, I mean, it's hard, but they are right out of high school. I mean, these are things that need to be talked about, because they are pathways. I have my own daughter. She refuses to give up soccer, but she also wants to be a firefighter. Well, guess what is the best way? Our community college. She's in a competitive soccer program, but she's also taking her fire courses. And you know what? Let's just say in 2 years, she decides to go to a university. No harm done. She's got her general ed done. paying pennies, right? We're paying pennies for it, maybe a couple $100 a semester, if that, just because of books. And then she gets into that. I'll take our superintendent who makes a pretty nice wage, in California. We're talking, with benefits, maybe, close or over $400,000. Guess where he went first? Community college, and then transferred in. He paid pennies for his doctorate degree because he went a different pathway instead of going directly into a 4-year. This is people who are, setting up and responsible now to give kids the same pathways that show success instead of throwing them into a 4-year that, unfortunately, most of our 4 years, especially in California, are training kids to, learn how to hate America and burn down their own beautiful universities here and destroy them. You're putting them on a pathway to success. And it's not to say a 4-year is bad, but let's put them on a pathway depending on what they want to do, instead of being in a 4-year for, who knows how long, changing how many different things, and then becoming loaded with this debt that they'll never, ever pay off. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm excited because as a mother, I could say, hey, I encouraged my daughter. She got accepted into the most beautiful Christian universities, right? And it was like weighing it out. And I got to sit with her in the process and say, okay, well, this, that, the other. And at the end of the day, it felt good that she told me it felt good she was accepted because she was a 4.0 student and, an athlete. But it also made sense to her, going into starting to go into adulthood, not to become so overwhelmed with debt and stress and still be able to manage it. And that's what we need to encourage this younger generation. There is pathways that we can help you with in education that are so important. And I love that, Linda McMahon is making a really big effort to drive that home, because that's where I think we have another opportunity to really change these our generation's lives.
I agree. That's a really good point. What the Secretary of Education is doing, focusing on that the 4-year degree. I mean, I was just talking to a couple of friends that have freshmen in college right now, and the amount of partying and the sorority and up to, really, we're like, so kids have an experience. I don't need, now that I'm down to, I have 2 graduating, one that is doing just that. She's going to a smaller college not far from our house, and she stayed at home her first year. She comes home all the time, and she has an internship, and it's sort of like a commuter, like she's treating it almost like commuter school. Like she's there because she has to get her degree so she can go to law school. That's it. Like has a fefew friends and stuff, but she's not looking at it like this is my social scene. So I have 2 left, and frankly, I'm just like, I don't want to send my daughters that I've worked so hard to raise, to protect, to fight all of these years, and now, like, fly little bird into this Marxist land of chaos and hedonism and see what happens. Like, we're really scratching our heads, like, what do we do? Because she's really bright, but my one that's closest to graduating, my 16-year-old, and she says she wants to go to medical school, and I'm just like, oh, I just the thought of, it's so much worse now. The thought of sending another one off to college, I want to go into business, and I wish there was a pathway where there was a internship. Like, you can go to school like a trade, and then you're an intern, and you just get right into working and building your life and being an entrepreneur, and you don't have to, waste so much time. We in college. There were so many classes I took that I absolutely didn't need at all. I could have done it in 2 years. 2 years is all I needed to get my pre-law degree and go to law school. That's it. Instead,
a lot of it's a racket. I mean,
it's a racket.
again, companies, though, I think are going to have to really be outliers and start, helping kids break out of that mold of the 4-year college is what's needed to make a good living. I hope that more do that. I think that they would actually get probably a pretty good pool of talent and of hard workers. But yeah, there's a huge party scene in colleges. There was even when I was in college.
Oh, yeah.
So, to be in debt and then to be among, a crazy scene of alcoholism and drugs.
How much did school cost when we went? It was like so cheap. I went to state school. It was so cheap. I had no debt.
But kids can't even get into the state school in Illinois because, again, all these foreign students are coming in. So, I think that we have definitely modernized how we're educating our kids on their opportunities post high school. And I think that is more mainstream now. Nobody really judges that. I think people hear a kid who is working and at a community college and say, wow, that kid has his act together. Like, he's breaking the mold. He's not in debt. So that's a good thing. And I think that our kids, it'll be very interesting to see how our kids parent their children. I think you're still going to see a huge homeschool alternative education model grow. And you're going to see that the trades are needed. I mean, AI requires facilities. It requires data centers. It requires, coolants, and people are going to need to fix that. So we're going to have a real need for skilled workers and for manual laborers. So
there's been a lot of change. I think you're right. Homeschooling at the K through 12 level, but there hasn't been any change at the collegiate level. So maybe now that our kids that we are raising our kids different. Now that our kids are heading off to college, now I feel like, do I have to save? Now I have to get into reform because that racket, and it is such a racket. They charge so much, and they have these huge endowments, right? Huge endowments. They charge a fortune. Half the classes are virtual. If you're a freshman, almost all of them are. So you're paying all of this money so they can still be behind a screen. They're not going to classes. My daughter, her first year, it was almost all virtual. I'm like, what the heck is happening for college? Not because of COVID. It's just because they're just doing it virtual. It's easier. And so virtual college, the first couple of years, I think now they're moving towards in person, but this is all really important stuff that I think we need to talk about more, because the debt, the waste of time, and the indoctrination
That's
of
what I
our
was gonna
kids.
say. The indoctrination.
Brainwashing.
This whole generation. I mean, I just keep telling people, fight the good fight. A lot of us can get in there, learn how it works, learn the opportunities, get in your communities. That's where you have the biggest voice. And then that's how it changes. I really believe that in my heart, because again, I'll go back to, I didn't even know what a lot of these programs that we could be focused on were until I got into that position. And I'm like, why are we not doing this? This is our job, is to provide these pathways to these students and not set them on a pathway of failure, right? Because again, we're sending them into these universities that they're going to load themselves up with debt. And most of them come out with degrees that they're not even going to use. You just said it, Scarlett. You took classes you didn't even need, that you spend a lot of money for. And again, 1 in 8 of those students are going into these beautiful schools, not even knowing basic math and reading. This is why we keep fighting the good fight, because this is insane. And I remember maybe 20 minutes ago, you brought up the cultural war thing. We didn't wage this war. They waged the war. They continue to wage the war. They call it a cultural war to try to quiet voices like all of us on here right now, Erin, Scarlett, Shannon, all of us moms who are fighting the good fight for basic things that we just were like, what in the world? No, you're not going to tell my kid sexually explicit things. No, you're not going to hide secrets from me. And no, you're not going to tell my child that is a girl that she could be a boy, and vice versa. She has to let a boy in her private spaces. Heck no. That is the war that they started. We are going to finish. And you ain't going to stop any of us unless you put us on a stretcher, because our kids are worth fighting for. And one day they're going to look back and say, it was moms, not the politicians. It was the moms that got their hands in there and they came out winning, because look at us. Now we know this beautiful country that our moms were fighting for on the front lines, and dads, and mama bears, papa bears. I agree that we all need them. I couldn't do this without my husband, but I'm excited to be in this fight with you guys. I love you ladies. I unfortunately have to leave to another meeting because my day is packed, but I appreciate you guys. I mean, I can go back to how many years ago each of us have met, and look at us. We're not out of
And our
this.
lips aren't even bloody yet, as my friend Steve Lucy says. So
I hope
Right.
this all terrifies the enemy that we all know each other and we work together.
Oh,
and we are
gosh.
strong in numbers.
They're like, they have a map and they connect all of us. I don't know if you guys ever seen it. It's
Yes.
so beautiful. I'm like, thank you for
string.
showing me how much we are connected and linking arms throughout the nation. I am so glad you reminded me on a day where it gets really ugly and another threat came in or somebody's in my face in the grocery store. But thanks for reminding me about the Scarletts, the Erins, the Shannons that I know will have my back in a minute. If I say, hey, ladies, get over here, I need you. Or you say that and we all meet together and we fight the good fight together. So I am so glad they do that because it's a reminder every day when things get rough and hard.
Love you,
Yes.
Sonia.
Bye,
Rooting for you.
Sonia. Thank you for coming on.
Ladies,
Thank
fight
you
in the
for
good
all
fight.
you're doing.
Yes.
God
Love
bless.
you.
Take care, Sonia.
After Thanksgiving, we'll do again. We'll just keep doing stuff like this because on Fridays, like it just like get on, talk. It's we were like at some point this was like number one. It's for the live stream. So we're right now. Look right now. We're number 2 right now behind Mario. I can't Nuffall, who has a huge account. So like
Great
that's
work.
It's great. It's great.
Keep it
what
up.
we're
You're doing amazing work, and these are good conversations. And it's just going to be regular people that save their own families. That's really what it comes down to. And we can leverage certain power brokers along the way, but it's going to take regular people with courage to keep talking and to just speak like normal people to these issues. It doesn't take a college degree to do it. It doesn't take a savant. Just takes people who care about their families and care about this country. So I'm grateful to connect with you ladies, and I'm grateful that you had me on, Scarlett. I'm going to have to scoot as well.
Yeah, but I want Erin, I want you to give your closing words.
Yes, I just want to emphasize what we've said all along, and that's the most impact anyone can have is in their own sphere of influence. And just again, to echo what Shannon said, we're just regular moms. There's nothing special about us. We just happen to have this particular platform, but really the most impact anyone can do, it's local, it's with the people you know, it's in your community, and band together. Like we have so much strength in numbers, the coalitions that are being built within our states of organizations, grassroots organizations working together. That's where our power is.
Yes, great. Thanks ladies for coming on. I feel like I could do this all day.
I know you could. Keep going, Scarlett.
I could be like, bye guys. Now
Keep going. But thank you so much for all
I
you
have to go
do.
pick up my daughter too, so it's a good time. And Thanksgiving. So we all have, I'm sure, I'm like, oh my gosh, Thanksgiving's next week. I have so much work to do. So we got to get to our holiday planning. But thanks guys for coming on, especially right before the busy holiday. And we'll do this again. Like I want to make this regular. I don't want it to be so structured. Like let's just get on and talk because hey, doing that we're beating a lot of big organizations. Just regular people are tuning in to listen to regular moms that have fought, and we're talking about real things, and we can talk about it just honestly because we're not beholden to anything. We can just tell the truth. So,
and we cannot be canceled.
No, we cannot be canceled. All right. Bye guys.
Bye. Take care, everybody. God bless.
Bye. Bye, Erin. Thank you everyone for watching this live stream. I am going to air it again tonight on X. So, because it's so good. And I know that there's going to be a lot of parents that are working right now or they are with their kids. So we'll re-air this. And so if you know of someone that you think, oh, they would have loved to listen to this conversation, be sure to let them know that I'm going to air it again at 8:00 Eastern time. And I will air it exclusively on the Moms for Liberty X account. And that's at Moms for Liberty. And then we'll have this up on our YouTube channel. And I should put some of this stuff up. Let's see. So the Moms for Liberty YouTube channel at Moms for Liberty. So that will be there. And on X at Moms for Liberty, we'll re-air this tonight, this conversation, because it was just awesome. It was great had on these powerhouses. We had legal advice from Dan Lennington. We had Gates Garcia hop on from Florida. Sonja Shaw, who is just doing amazing work. And as she said, she is the first statewide endorsed candidate for Moms for Liberty. We are endorsing her in her attempt to bring sanity to California and become the first sane head of the Department of Education in California in a very, very long time. And hats off to her for doing this. I mean, it's so hard to be a candidate, and it's so hard to run a statewide race, have kids, and she's a school board member. And on top of that, she's the president of her school board, constantly being sued, always fighting the good fight. And thank you to Erin Lee. She's amazing. She's so sweet. I was with her and her husband in Chicago at the Defending Ed conference. And shout out to Defending Ed. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for exposing the NEA. Hi, Marissa. We've got such an excellent group of people, don't we? Like, we all work together collaboratively. Moms for Liberty, Defending Ed, Awake Illinois. We have the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and he mentioned the litany of other public interest legal firms that are just doing so much work. America First Legal, Southeastern Legal Foundation, Kim Herman. There's so many great warriors, so many wonderful people that it's hard to list them all. And I'm very excited to hear that my friend January Littlejohn, that her case is being considered right now at the Supreme Court. Crossing fingers that they will hear her case. They will hear oral arguments, and there's I won't even pretend that I'm a constitutional lawyer, but we will have Dan on again after Thanksgiving, because I want to talk to him about the outcome of Littlejohn. I want to talk to him about the two very big cases coming up. There'll be two cases in January that will deal with the male athletes invading women's sports. And I want to hear his opinion about those two really important cases, and about the NEA charter, which is something that at Moms for Liberty we are actively involved in. We want the NEA federal charter to be revoked. They have a congressional charter, 1906, established as a professional organization for teachers. They are overly political. They've strayed from their original purpose, and we need to remove this special federal endorsement and the unique privileges provided to the NEA, considering the fact that it's just revealed that they are actively trying to recruit kids to become transgender or gender expansive, and that they specifically say that if you are a Republican or you voted for Trump, you are a villain, you are a bad guy, and they're going to come for your children. So there's no reason why the NEA should hold a federal charter. That is absolutely wrong. And there is a HR 4595, the National Education Charter Repeal Act. So I want to make sure I have that information right, but we definitely support the repealing the charter for the NEA, and that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. I mean, Becky Pringle, I mean, seriously, she in June, she looked like she was losing her mind at the last conference. She makes, I'm looking it up right now, she makes $500,000. $500,000 a year. For what? What does she do? Every year, the test scores get lower. Every year, our kids are less prepared for college. They're less prepared for the rigor of adulthood. Their ability to think rationally is dissipating because to think rationally is white supremacy. To do math is oppression. And ask someone to read or write in either like, oh, well, we have AI for that, I guess. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is all just sheer insanity. The amount of money that is spent on education and the ROI for it, it's absolutely appalling. But I think that people don't put all these numbers together. They don't put together what they're paying for property taxes if they're paying property taxes. They don't consider the amount of state funding and then federal funding and the grants and all the hidden money and then with unions. So got our work cut out for us, certainly. Well, anyways, I have to go get my daughter from school. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support for the Unleashed podcast. Thank you to Chris from Trace Gallagher's show, who brought by the van to my house last night so that I could be on the show, Fox at Night. Thank you to Trace Gallagher. Thank you for the producers. It was a really unique experience. I was shaking so much. It was unusual, but it looked good. And I should be getting a clip soon, and I'll air that. But we discussed in a much shorter form. We discussed the NEA, and we discussed what's happening in schools and why our kids are graduating and they cannot do basic math and word problems. Well, those are very hard. I mean, word problems for 8th graders were too challenging for graduating seniors in California that were entering the University of California, San Diego. And that is not unique. That is not unique. So there are a lot of things. There are a lot of issues here. And if you're running for office, hello, these are issues that could break through the echo chambers and get people to think, And so, very important. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And be sure, if you're interested in joining Moms for Liberty, we would love to have you. So go to momsforliberty.org. That's moms4 liberty.org, and learn more about Moms for Liberty. You can join, maybe you even start a chapter in your area. That would be great too. We need more Shannons, Sonjas, Erins, Scarletts. We need more. We need to grow. We need the next generation too. Young moms, you saw the gender unicorn. Maybe your kids aren't in school yet, but they will be. And you will be faced with the gender unicorn. If you would like to not be faced with the gender unicorn, you should join Moms for Liberty and get involved now so that you have options when your kids are starting preschool and kindergarten. Don't wait. Start now. Your kids will be in school. And this garbage is there. So start fighting now. Don't wait. Don't wait until it's your kid. Don't wait until suddenly you realize, like Erin said, in your kid's 4th, 5th grade class, they start reading George. George is a book recommended for 4th graders. George is a grooming book. It grooms kids to be transgender. And so don't wait until your kid is reading this book. Stop now. And this is not at all about banning books. It's that what is age appropriate in a school district. It's not even talking about a library. We're talking about a school district. What is available to kids? What is required reading for them? And have they given parents a warning and a right to opt out? Have they told kids, we are going to talk about some controversial topics that might not align with your deeply held religious beliefs or values? They do that, You get to opt out, they're following the law. They don't do that, they are not following the law. And they are trying to undermine, and they're being secretive. And that is not right. And it needs to stop. So thank you. Stand up, keep fighting. And we will be on, I'm not sure if I'm going to do an episode on Monday. So we may not have another podcast until after Thanksgiving. And then it'll be fun because I'm going to DC again, and I'm going to try to do a podcast live from DC for the first time. So that should be fun. And so thanks everyone. If I am not back, have a happy Thanksgiving, enjoy time with your family, find some good Black Friday deals, and just be present, be thankful, put your family first, always. And bye.